every once in a while to remind us that things are happening in and around and amongst us that are super important. Like, did you know that apparently we are now once again going to redraw some of the redistricting maps in Alabama? What? Yes, there are things that are happening in and around and amongst us that are important and sometimes even more important than what happens in DC and other places. So yeah, we're going to cook up a batch of home fries. That's number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, the Freedom Caucus. Y'all, I didn't get to talk about it yesterday, but it's really, really important. I kind of touched on it, dabbled with it a little bit when I was talking with Jeff and Dale during the Grand Council. But we're going to talk about the Freedom Caucus. That's the most conservative batch of guys in Congress, has been for quite a while, and their ranks are getting slimmer. What does that mean? And oh, by the way, can we have Freedom Caucus at the state level? Well, there's an answer to that. Y'all stand by. We'll have number 3 on the Triple Dipper if we can get to it today, the Freedom Caucus, and I'll tell you all about it. All right, let me jump on into today's Rightside Way opening monologue, and I'll just remind you guys that, as always, attorney Stan McDonald is indeed the daily sponsor of the Rightside Way, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, 30-year veteran in the practice of law, longtime conservative. And I'll tell you more about Stan McDonald here momentarily. All right, let me just say this. There is a fight ongoing. There is. There's a fight ongoing for our kids, and it is a fight worth having. It's not just a fight for our kids' innocence, by the way. It's a fight for their very lives. It's a fight for their hearts and their minds. It's a fight for the right to love our kids, raise our kids, educate our kids. And yes, I'm saying it's a fight worth having. You watch the news. In the midst of all the stories about foreign policy and wars and rumors of wars and economic trends and judicial action and who's running for what office, in the middle of all that, you also will find that there are near daily stories that deal with what I would call cultural issues. Cultural issues, oftentimes an attempt by the left to transform the values, the mores, the thoughts, the likes and dislikes of our very culture. And I would hazard a guess that over half those stories deal with how the left seeks to grab the hearts and minds of our children and supplant the rights of parents to raise their own children. It's really, really a messed up situation. Yesterday, the horrible story broke about yet another tragic loss of innocent lives as dozens of young children were praying in a morning mass at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A deranged man, no other word best describes him, a deranged man drove to the school, and with fully cognizant premeditation, he ended the lives of 2 young children and wounded 14 others, as well as 3 adults, before taking his own life. It was a murder-suicide. It was pre-planned, and it was something that, if you get down to it, was entirely predictable. He had been on a glide path to catastrophe for a long time. We have an entire community of people in Minnesota right now who are picking up the pieces and trying to find a silver lining somewhere, but their lives have now been forever altered because of an entirely predictable moment. So may the Lord God bless those families and that parish and that school and that city. But let me dive right now, though, into the truly uncomfortable part that many in the media landscape don't want to touch. But I'm going there. I'll go there right now. I'll go there big. The fact is, this was a predictable event, despite the fact that the Minneapolis police chief announced that they still don't have a motive. We don't know what the killer did or why he did it. Well, yes, we do, because he told us. There was a confession tape. There was a video. There were 2 journals. There were rambling, incoherent writings that indicate that even the shooter admitted that he knew himself that he was mentally unstable. And it had been brewing for some time and even ignored. The man was in his 20s, living in his mom's house, collecting guns and writing manifestos and decorating his firearms with slogans like "Kill the Jews" and "Where's your God now?" Anyone who had a moment of care and concern would have seen this coming. Where were his family members? Well, I guess they were too busy affirming his mental illness and telling him that even though he's a biological male, that he could be a woman if he really wanted to. Documents on file as a matter of public record even show that his mom assisted him with his name change to be a female, so they say, when he was 17. Because yes, the mass murderer of innocent children at the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota yesterday was yet another radicalized transgender. I'll be the first to say that I know that not every mass murderer is a transgender and that not every transgender is a killer. But I do know that every transgender is mentally ill. And that's a fact. I also see an awful pattern that the left does not even want to address. Think about it. You ready? The Nashville Covenant Christian shooter was a transgender. The Lakewood Church shooter was a transgender. The Colorado Springs shooter was a transgender. The Denver shooter was a transgender. The Colorado Springs shooter identified as non-binary. The Aberdeen shooter was transgender. The Iowa high school shooter was transgender. Radical gender ideology is creating radicalized, mentally unstable people by claiming to help them by, quote, affirming their mental illness. Think about that. There is no other mental illness that we are told to help people wallow in. None. If somebody was depressed or had anxiety or an eating disorder, if they were diagnosed bipolar or had schizophrenia, we would want them to get better, to seek help, to find counseling, maybe even medication, because we would not want them to believe that there was no hope. We would not want them to remain in that difficult moment any longer than they had to. Oh, but not transgenderism. No. Which, by the way, is really called gender dysphoria. The left tells us that the healing comes from joining them in the delusion that biological sex or gender is a fluid construct and that it can be changed daily on a whim. One day you're a dude, the next day you're a chick. And that is simply, demonstrably, and scientifically false. It's a lie. It's a lie that is not just cultural, held together by certain members of our society. It's a lie that is too often these days even promoted by government. Our government. I mean, think about what I just said. The Biden administration's finally gone, but they were promoting it like nobody's business. But still to this day, we have like the government of the state of Maine. The government of the state of Maine has been belligerently clinging to their government-sanctioned belief that gender is fluid and there's nothing wrong with men competing against women as long as they declare themselves to be a woman. It's as simple as that. How do you feel today, Jim? Well, I feel like my feminine side's more dominant today. Well, that's fine, Jim. You go march your 6'3", 300-pound self over there to the girls' side of the gym and just have at it. I mean, come on. Maine has become the poster child for government-sponsored transgender ideology in schools and sports. The leftist leaders in Maine gave up their souls to the little g gods of gender ideology because the agenda was more important than the kids. A survey was done by the American Parents Coalition. It found that of about 600 registered Maine voters, 63% of them said that school sports participation should be based on biological sex. 66% agreed that it, quote, it is only fair to restrict women's sports to biological women. The poll also found that 60% of residents in Maine would support a ballot measure limiting that participation in women's and girls' sports to purely biological females. And that included, by the way, 64% of independents and 66% of parents who had kids under the age of 18. But y'all, I got to tell you, just being mad about it is really not enough. Being mad after the fact, too, is especially not enough. You got to say something at the time. You got to speak out in the moment. If the family is going to mollycoddle and so-called affirm the person, and then that inflicts something upon your family and your loved ones and your friends and your realm, then you have a right to say something about it. One of the most disturbing accounts I read of the recent Maine issue, state of Maine, is a track meet where a dude just wore out the female competition. And there were no parents crying foul, we're told. There was a sports photographer there who said that there were some folks who were cheering the dude on, but he didn't hear anybody calling out the issue. Think about that. All the parents of all the girls who were competing and nobody cried foul? Really? But the reasons why people stay silent is too often because they can't stand the idea of someone daring to call them mean or homophobic. Look, it's not mean to stand up for your daughter. It's not homophobic to say dudes can't be chicks. It's not wrong to say that naked men don't belong in the girls' locker room. It's just not. But that same sports photographer, he said he got so much backlash for posting pictures of the boy who thinks he's a girl competing in girls' track events, he took them all down. In his words, he said, I didn't know what to do. And somebody finally said, well, if you just remove the photo, the debate will go away. So I removed the photo and the debate went away. No, sir, it really didn't. You went away. You quit. You left the ring before the bell rang. You walked off the field of battle before the fight was over. But that's exactly what the radical left wants. They want sheeple who will just sit there quietly and say nothing when they come for your kids. In the epic novel Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, the author talked about what happens when people decide to go ahead and meekly accept a lie as their new normal. She said, here's a quote, you ready? She said, quote, people think that a liar gains a victory over his victim, but what I've learned is that a lie is an act of self-abdication because one surrenders one's reality to the person to whom one lies, making that person one's master, condemning oneself from then on to faking the sort of reality that person's view then requires to be faked. Basically, what I read in that quote is that when we choose to live the lie, we have surrendered our own will. When we are told there's a new normal, And we just need to get on board with it, even when we know it's wrong or harmful or flies in the face of our own faith or reason. Then we have just lied to all those around us and surrendered our will to the new normal. And we have then let the new normal become the master. And there's been a lot of that going on. There's a beating down of standards and mores and values into what is being foisted on us as a new normal that we had just better find our happy place with, I guess. Well, I say no. We should not. We cannot. We cannot become so benign in our response to all of it that we become mere sheeple, just preyed upon by the wolves. So yeah, this is becoming an everyday event. Children are being hurt by leftist agendas, and it is a sickness, by the way. It absolutely is a sickness. We're in an age right now where right is called wrong and wrong is called right, and the left knows that if we raise up our children the way they should go, that when they get old, they will not depart from this. So they have taken the tack that they should have an unequal access to what it means to raise our children. Our children. And we need to stop shrugging our shoulders. We need to stop laughing this off as some kind of weird fad, because it's not. We need to tell our children we have their back. If you show up at your daughter's baseball game or basketball game, and there's a dude on the other team, you should make yourself known and insist that he be removed from not only the court, but the locker room as well. That's not hard. That's just right. And that fight's ongoing right now. It is real. It is every day. Make no mistake when I say it's a fight. It's a fight worth having, though, to save a generation of young hearts and minds that we love. It's indeed a fight worth having. Because the only affirming care that a kid needs is to be told that they are the best kid the way God made them, and then walk them through any pain they're going through into good mental health again. Never, ever, ever affirm the lie. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, a lot there, a lot to unpack, but the reality is transgenderism is a lie, and the fact that we have to affirm it is a lie. And the only affirmation that a kid really needs, desperately needs, is just to hear from those who are in their life that they are perfect the way they were made, fearfully and wonderfully made. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're going to enjoy this one. I just had a conversation with Brian Dawson from 1819 News, president and CEO of an up-and-coming company that is making a huge splash in the state of Alabama. But listen, you're going to be amazed by his personal story. Brian Dawson, you talk about rags to riches. You talk about somebody who's been redeemed. You're talking about a guy who is looking at life in prison, who now has an amazing family, an amazing life, an amazing testimony of how the Lord has redeemed him, and who is, oh, by the way, making a huge difference in our state. Stay tuned. Just Right podcast coming up next. Yeah, let's do a show. 1, 2, 3, hey! Brian Dawson, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good. I got notes, dude.
All right.
I'm gonna start with a sort of introduction. All right.
Hit me.
You was born and raised outside the state of Alabama. Spent a lot of your time in Colorado Springs. Am I right?
Yep, and Derby, Kansas. Those are the two places.
Does that make you a carpetbagger if you came from out west?
No, west is not north.
Okay.
So yeah, carpetbaggers only come from the north.
All right, so you're allowed.
Yeah.
You were a white suburban kid.
Correct.
But your parents divorced when you're young. I know that. I can relate to that. But then there's this period of your life. We'll talk about it in detail here in a minute. You've been very candid in some of the other interviews and discussions I've even had with you. Crime, drugs, drinking.
Sure.
And then there became time when you were even involved with drug cartels and other things and spent time in prison.
Yep.
At one point, I know you were facing like just short of 400 years potentially in prison. But then you found Jesus. You found a beautiful woman. You found purpose. You found parenthood like 7 times.
Correct.
It's
the number of completion, Phil.
Oh, well, there you go.
They say perfection and completion.
Speaking of which, we're going to get to the initials of all your kids' names, too, which is very cool. And then now it's radio, media, 1819 News, president and CEO. So let's start, all right? Let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Early childhood, dude. How did you get to where you went?
Yeah, so interesting thing, I always like to, the more I learn about people and get to know people and everything, I realize who they are, where they're from, who their parents are matters a lot. And I also think, well, I'll just kind of go into that. So my dad is from West Monroe, Louisiana. He is a swamp redneck. He grew up with Phil Robertson.
Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty, okay.
Yeah.
Phil was about 7 years my dad's senior, and so Phil was the camp counselor at Camp Chioka in Louisiana, And so, my dad was like 10 and Phil was like 17 at the summer camp or whatever. But my grandma, Memu, as we call her, Betty Dawson, taught Sunday school with Miss K for 30 years at Whites Ferry Road Church of Christ in West Monroe, Louisiana. So I say all that because it's neat on one hand that my family is close with their family or whatever, but also to give you, like, everybody knows the Robertsons and the swamp redneck thing, right? Like, they're swamp rednecks with money. But prior to them having money, there was a saying in West Monroe that the only people that were more poor than the Dawsons was the Robertsons. Okay, and the Dawsons was po, like they were super poor. Okay, I would joke and say
they changed that over time.
Yeah, so they did. My dad not so much. That's okay though. Went the middle class route, but my dad, swamp redneck from Louisiana. Grew up. I always say back when poor people were skinny, had to hunt for food, garden, like so. That's that side of my family, and then on the other side, there's my mom. My mom. And we'll kind of get into a little bit more of her background later in the story as it's pertinent. But she was the daughter of a state senator in Colorado, Colorado Springs specifically. And so my grandfather was a state senator. He ran for governor. He ended up running for Congress against Joel Heffley in Colorado. That was the only politics I was around for where all that happened before I was born, except for the run for Congress. And he has a country club background, right? And so you mix this swamp redneck with this country club, and this is where you get this amazing pedigree that sits before you.
Had this sort of Romeo and Juliet feel to it.
Yeah, I guess so. But that I really do think that plays a lot into who I am and how I go about things. But for better or for worse. But yeah, so they couldn't have been more different, and they got divorced when I was 2, right? Like who didn't see the writing on the wall with that one? So they got divorced when I was 2. Courts put me with my mom. That's kind of the knee-jerk reaction of the court system. At least it was back then. I don't think it's changed that much now. The knee-jerk reaction is give kids to mom. And had they have done any type of due diligence whatsoever and looked into the situation, they would have seen that was not the best place for me. And so when I was 2 years old, boom, I'm now living with my mom, seeing my dad every other weekend. And
where were y'all living then?
This was Colorado Springs. Okay. Yep. And so, my mom, God bless her, I love her. She did the best she could with what she had, right? And so I've worked through a lot of unforgiveness with my mom and with my dad, but just forgiving them and me thinking, oh, I've forgiven them, but it's like, no, really. And then once you've forgiven them, you can actually see the appreciation that they did everything they possibly could. Now that I have kids, I see. But my mom had a very rough childhood, though she was from country club, lineage. She was sexually abused as a child. She, had all kinds of abuse.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, listen, I got to tell you about Stan McDonald. Oh, yeah, Stan McDonald. He and I were texting earlier today, as a matter of fact. But Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, 30-year veteran in the practice of law, long-time conservative. Y'all, that dude's been in the mix, in the fray, in the trenches, if you will, on all the policies and the politics that right-side ruffians actually care about for years. So yeah, attorney Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions. He can stand up for you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to say if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So that being said, I'm going to tell you how to reach him. You ready? Attorney Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee in Huntsville. He's an America First family man. Here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. 256-479-3020. Stan McDonald. Tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. And no representation is made that any other attorney would be as cool as Stan McDonald. There you have it. Wow. I like coming up with new disclaimers. That's my new thing, I think. I think every day I'm going to have a new disclaimer. Just going with it.
And the lawyers no longer have to make you do that stupid thing anymore. So
you know what would be a heck of a thing to find out I was wrong and I've been messing this up all along?
Well, it would be on Stan in that situation. So I think
that's true.
Clear.
Okay. Hey, listen, text lines are open. I'll be taking your feedback here in a minute. 833-687-4448. Love to get your thoughts on the monologue. Tell me what you thought about that, about the idea that this is a mental health issue, and let's stop pretending it's not. In fact, I've never pretended it's not, but let's stop society, please, pretending it's not. And I got to say, And this is a reach, and I know it's a reach, but I don't know what was up with his mom, where she was in all this. This kid was sick, and he'd been sick for a long time. And the court documents show that when he was a minor, when he was 17 years old, mom took him to the courthouse to sign the paperwork and wrote on there that he identified as a female and wanted to change his name. So mom was doing this as a minor, meaning there was a time in his life when she could have influenced things and she chose not to. And I look at this and go, what could have been different yesterday if mom had just said, son, you just need help and I love you. And I don't know that didn't happen, but it doesn't appear to have. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Just horrible. And, so she had a lot of trauma in her life that she never dealt with. And so I'm living with her, and the solution to every problem that she has is another man. And so I ended up with like 5 or 6 stepdads. I lost count. Okay. Now I will say, I know there's no way you haven't seen the movie or read the book, Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So that was my life to a T with my mom. That was my life to a T. We watched that movie, and my mother and I were like, this is like maybe 6 months ago, we watched the movie.
Together?
No. But I mean, I watched it. I was a wreck. My wife's looking at me. My oldest son, who's watched it with us, is like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, it was a wreck. And I told my mom about it. My mom watched it, and she's like, oh my gosh. It was like PTSD watching it, because it was so on point with that 2 to 10 years with my mom. And I always make the joke, me and JD Vance are the same person, except JD Vance, he got into the Marines and went to Yale, and I got into drugs and went to jail. But other than that, same person. But yeah, and so when I was that went on, watching my mom get drunk, taking pharmaceutical drugs, I watched her get beat by some of the men that she was with. Just not good formative years from 2 to 10, right? And so by the time I'm 10, I get into a big fight with my mom, and she, despite many court battles for my dad to get custody of me that he continued to lose, my mom just let go and said, you can go live with your dad. And so when I was 10, I went and moved with my dad, and he was living in Wichita, Kansas. He worked at Cessna for the bulk of his career in Wichita, Kansas.
So I got to tell you, and sometime I'll tell you my whole story, but I didn't wind up in jail, but I was headed there.
Yeah.
Parents divorced when I was young, lived with my mom, did not respond well to multiple marriages. Mom finally gave me the ultimatum as we had a big blow up. She sent me to live with Dad, who, by the way, was living in London, England, as an Army officer. And so I like to say God had to give me a 3-year timeout away from everything that I was used to for me to find him.
Yeah.
Of course, you had a 384-year timeout coming.
Potentially, yeah.
So let me ask you, you're living with your dad. I researched before I sit down with you, and I'm watching other interviews you've done and stuff. And you said in one case that your dad's level of discipline and household, management was more what you needed, but you still wound up going down some roads.
Sure.
So you were, and I got to say, in going through all the news stories and things, your mugshot came up at some point.
A bunch, yeah.
And you were just a normal looking high school dude. You didn't have like body piercings and face tats, and you weren't doing gang signs in the mugshot. You just looked like a high school football player, which you were. Am I right?
Yeah.
But you also had this sideline gig of doing things that got you in big trouble.
Yeah. No, I'm an all-in guy. Whatever I'm into, I'm all into it, and that's just the way I'm wired, and it was no different than that. And so, going to the structure that my dad provided, but me still falling, I think that was a great tee up. I've never thought about it in those terms, and it actually makes a lot of sense. So, I'm 10. I move in with my dad. He's still not a Christian to this day. So if you're listening, pray for my dad. But he put a roof over my head. He got up every day at 4:30 in the morning and went to work. He showed up to my football games. We ate dinner every night around the table. Okay. He was what he was supposed to be as a father, and he didn't have a father. His dad abandoned them, his siblings. So he never had a dad. And so the gaps that he was filling in were those real basic gaps that he completely lacked, which was the providing, the protecting, those type of things. And so he generationally fixed that, that basic blocking and tackling gap that a father is supposed to provide. But some of the areas where I'd say, and I don't mean this disparagingly, where he fell short, he's not a real good communicator where he can sit down and say, son, let me talk to you about manhood. Son, let me talk like that. Those weren't his things. He showed up and he did what he was supposed to do. And I'm very, very grateful that I had the time.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This show goes from from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains they call Auburn, straight across the line from there to what we now call Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. Thank you very much. That's just the radio. And then, oh, by the way, there's all y'all in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web. Live streaming the show, like right now, looking in on the studio, live streaming the show on places like X and Rumble and YouTube and Facebook and our website, rightsidemedia.org. And then all you podcasters, the ones who catch it after the fact, catch up on things you might have missed. Listen, the bottom line is this. Hear me say it. We love you. We appreciate you. You're the only reason why we do it. Thank you very much. No matter where you catch the show, thank you very, very much. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it. In fact, somebody already has. Let me just jump on the phone real quick. Carl from Decatur. Hey, Carl, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Phil. How you doing today? You're sounding good.
I'm well, sir. I'm well. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to comment that you did on your monologue, and
okay.
I appreciate every word you say. I'm in the Word, and it's something that puzzles me about the kid's family. They never mention his father.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's within family. I've been fighting this same subject that we're on, and it's been going on in my fight ever since 1986.
Okay.
When they first started all of this stuff, and I knew and was proclaiming that this stuff was coming to a head, and that churches need to be aware of it, and they need to try to prepare for it. But you made some real good points, and that's what I wanted to talk on. And I'm sorry that this thing has happened. People say on the news, the legacy news, I guess, that it's not prayer, it's not that they was in there praying when that happened, but prayer is all we got.
That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
And so, it's and I teach my kids and all, I say, it's not the words you say, because the Bible teaches us that, we don't know what to pray for, but the Spirit intercedes for us. So
that's right. And groaning's too deep for words.
To do.
That's right. I remember the lesson I learned in Luke 12:12, that sometimes the Holy Spirit will tell you in that very hour what you ought to pray, and it's true.
That's right. So, prayer is good. And, that's part of you talking to God. You're not talking to somebody else that's here that can help you. God help you, and his ministering spirit to help you. So, we need to take comfort in that. And I wanted to, and I need to, I guess, throw up is why did they get rid of a lot of the mental institutions?
Yeah.
I learned during that was a way for them to get around having this issue brought forward, that it was a mental condition. And then on top of that, they started making provisions for lawsuits on those counselors who would counsel people and say that it was a mental issue that people had when they dealt with that.
Yeah.
And so those are things that gradually come along to desensitize us to this thing, and now we got a whole political show of a whole political party, which is a party that I guess I still belong to. But I don't agree with them. I know they say that, by association, you agree with what they do, but I do not agree with the Democrat Party. I wish there was more voices speaking louder and harder and to the point, breaking down these strongholds that the devil is bringing up. So I know I sometimes ramble on, but that's just my mind.
That's good words. But hey, well, Carl, that ain't ramblings, man. That's good words, and I appreciate your call, and I appreciate your call to prayer. And listen, just call in more often when you feel like it. All right.
All right. Thank you much.
Thank you, Carl from Decatur. I tell you what. Before I jump into text messages, he said something that brings me back to a point that I had made earlier. I made it yesterday, and then this morning I do this thing every day. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go check out our social media. You can find me on X at Sinphil Williams, SEN at Sinphil Williams. You can find us on Facebook as well. We have 2 accounts, one for Rightside Media. So I do this thing every morning called Thoughts on the Morning Drive, where I'm driving in and I record a short video, like a minute to minute and a half. This morning I did it on prayer for the situation in Minneapolis. And there's an article, oh my gosh, there's an article that came out that just really absolutely confirmed what I said. The issue is prayer is okay. That's the point. And yet there are 2 articles right now at the top of foxnews.com. I had pulled up real quick. I didn't realize there was 2. I thought there was 1. Now there's 2. One of them says the left erupts after the Catholic school tragedy, saying things like "F off with your Minneapolis." Screaming about what he really meant, but he said at one point, it's not about thoughts and prayers. Well, I believe it is. And then at the same time, Jen Psaki, who is just, a troll, but she was the press secretary for Joe Biden's first half of his term. And she came out with this scathing tweet saying prayer doesn't mean anything, and prayer is not what we need, and that prayer doesn't do anything to stop school shootings, and as if somehow or another she just decided to discard it entirely because she has a narrative she wants to meet. And then within that article I mentioned that Fox has right now, the one that says left erupts after, the question of prayer, you've got members of Congress. Representative Maxwell Frost, Democrat out of Florida, said these children were probably praying when they were shot to death. So don't give us your blankety blank thoughts and prayers. Trump got rid of the Office of Gun Violence and Prevention, and then Trump got it, yada, 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 yada. Trump derangement syndrome. Nobody can pray because apparently Trump. A guy named Jeff Timmer from the Lincoln Project attacked Senator Lindsey Graham, who made the comment that his thoughts and prayers were with the kids in Minneapolis. And he says they were praying when they died. How'd that work out, you obsequious blankety blankety blank? Now go blank blank. These are people who are in positions of leadership with a voice, and they're saying this. Here's my point. My point is they're wrong. My point is you absolutely need to be praying. You know why? I'll give you 3 reasons why. I'll give you 3 reasons why to pray in the wake of this situation. Number 1, the Catholic diocese, the church up there, Annunciation Church, has sent out a message to the world asking for prayer, like a desperate call, asking for the world to pray for them right now. So number 1, they've asked for it. It is ours to do. So there's that. Number 2, we're told in Scripture that the fervent prayers of a righteous man availeth much. We're told to pray without ceasing. We're also told, oh, by the way, that be anxious for nothing, but in all things through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. That's prayer. And the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. That's prayer. All right. And then the 3rd thing that I would say is this. It's always something you can do. It is. Don't think the rest of us aren't upset about what happened. Sometimes prayer soothes our souls, but also I believe the power of prayer actually lifts things up to the Lord and brings change. And so you can't always be there physically with the person, right? The vast majority, the 99.9999% of us who are listening right now or talking or just even in our sphere, we're not going to be able to rush up to Minneapolis and provide any kind of care and concern and be there physically and do something. But we can pray. We can pray where we are, when we are. We can pray whenever we feel like it. And don't let any leftist hater tell you what to do with your prayers. That's between you and your Lord. And you're lifting up somebody out of the goodness of your heart and soul. So I'm saying pray. I'm saying pray a lot. Pray without ceasing. That doesn't mean you're necessarily like nothing comes out of your voice except prayer. It just means you have an attitude of prayer that is nonstop. And you're just in it. I believe that. Jesus Christ is the Lord of my life. I don't mind saying it. Ain't nobody going to tell me I can't pray. And you know what? If they don't like it, that's on them. They can explain that to God later. Me and God, we're going to have a talk about Minneapolis. And I'm going to be lifting those people up in prayer. Well, there's a nice little rant. Put that one out later. Have I got a phone call? Well, I'm so sorry. I did not even realize I was on a good rant.
I didn't want to interrupt you. Of course.
It's probably wise. Who have I got? Is that Wolverine Dan? I tell you what, Wolverine Dan, I got about 2 minutes, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Nothing wrong with prayer.
Come on.
If they don't want to pray, that's fine.
Come on.
Prayer to me is, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Come on.
Prayer to me is like taking a breath, like surviving in this world. Prayer is everything to me. Without prayer, I'm nothing. If they want to do this and say that, let them say it. Because you know what? I've got a front row seat when I get to heaven, because number one, I'm trying to live the right way. Number two, my aunt was a nun, which is great. Anyway, no, that's joking aside. But I want to be there when I'm on the other side in the pearly gates and watching them show up, say, okay, I want to get in. And God's going to say, whoa, wait a minute. You don't like prayer? You're against prayer, that we should all go to hell? Well, okay, I guess you're not going to get to the pearly gates. That's a shame, because, Phil, prayer, we all know, without prayer, it's there's nothing, Phil. There's absolutely nothing. That's what keeps me going every day, and everybody else in this country that prays the same way.
Good words, brother. Got to run to a break, but you're spot on. Appreciate you, man. Have a great day. All right. See ya. JP, take us to a break, brother. We'll take a break. All right. A prayerful break on Thankful Thursday. How about that? We'll come right back, get some more text messages, and start moving right on into the Dipper. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
That I did, it definitely shaped and molded me. But when from 2 to 10, which they call formative years, those are formative years, right? And your formative years are not very formative. You carry baggage. And so I'm with my dad in this structure, carrying that baggage. And so I would get straight A's on the report cards, and I thrived in that structure, and I did good in sports. But underneath, I was angry. And my stepmom would always tell me, she's like, you're so angry. Why are you so angry? And she didn't understand. And I was angry at the world. And I was never really comfortable in my own skin. I had a lot of insecurity issues. And the only time I ever felt comfortable in my own skin is when I drank and did drugs. And so I drank and did drugs a lot.
Sort of a self-medicating kind of thing?
I definitely think it was a self-medicating thing. And once I kind of dove into that, I became the life of the party. I created a fake ID. I've always been somewhat, innovative. Learned how to create a fake ID, and then I could go get everybody alcohol. So I was like the coolest guy, in school. I could go get everybody booze and, party. But like everybody else would like party and go home and be fine. I would drink to the point of blacking out and not remember what I did. And that would happen 2 or 3 times a week, right? Like I was like a wild party animal. And then that went on to the point where I started to do drugs. And same thing, whatever I do, I do it all the way. And that happened there.
But you didn't just do it, you were selling them too, right?
Yeah. And so how it started is, a little bit of weed, selling a little bit of weed, whatever. And then I would experiment with a little bit of cocaine or methamphetamines or ecstasy or whatever. And in that experimenting phase, I was still living in a suburb of Wichita called Derby, Kansas, with my dad. And
I got siblings, by the way.
So I've got, from my mom, I have a brother who has a different dad.
Okay.
And he's Brad, and he's 2 years, 2 months, 2 days older than me. Anyway, probably not pertinent to the story, but it's interesting. And then I have a stepbrother. When my dad remarried, he remarried a woman, my stepmom, who had a son that was my exact age. So we were in the same schools together growing up.
Okay, wow, yeah.
Yeah. And he was also into partying and doing things, and also found himself in prison at some point in his life. So, I always want to go down rabbit trails, and it's like, I'm not going to rabbit trail, I promise. So that experimenting with some of those more illicit drugs, I snuck out one night to do that, and I came home after sneaking out thinking that because what I would do is I would sneak out, my bedroom would be shut, my dad would just get up and go to work. Well, he, for whatever reason that morning, needed something, and so he came in my room, and I wasn't in there. He's like, So I got busted sneaking out, and he took me to get a drug test, and I peed hot for every single thing on the drug test, and he was like, oh, wow. And so we kind of locked horns over that, and he said, you need to quit football and go to rehab, which is a really big deal. My team ended up 6A in Kansas, is as big as it gets. They don't have 7A there. Yeah. And we were predicted to be the 6A state champs, or at least going to state.
What position?
I was defensive end, and they were going to move me to nose tackle that year, which was really interesting. I was like 225 and ran a 4.840, but they wanted me inside. Anyway, I won't get into that. But yeah. So that was my I was really, really excited about my senior year, years and years of playing football, wanted to do that. And he's telling me I got to quit to go to rehab, or I can quit football and go live with my mom in Colorado again. And so I packed up all my stuff, my car, and I drove to Colorado. And that was the biggest mistake of my life.
So mine wound up being the most impetuous good decision I ever made, because I got caught sneaking out of the house. So I was drinking and smoking starting in 4th grade.
Yeah.
And mine wasn't self-medicating, I don't think. And it wasn't a lot. Yeah. But it was there. And I was hanging out with a bunch of pot smokers. And mine was more along the lines of, you said I can't, so I'm gonna. Yeah. You said I can't, so this is what I'm gonna do. Sure. And it was just like that live on the edge kind of sense, 4th grade though. Yeah. I mean, who does that at 11 years old? But nonetheless, Mom caught me sneaking out of the house in 7th grade again, and gave me the ultimatum. What do you want to do here? You want to go live with your dad? And I just went, yeah. I mean, that was it. There was no thought. There was no preconceived, I've been looking for this opportunity. There was no, I think this is a good idea. It was just get back at Mom. Yeah. And so I said, yeah. Just the opposite, though. Mine wound up being the best decision I could have made. Totally impetuous. Yeah. But I did it. So you wind up in Colorado, though, brother. Yeah. Colorado weren't good for you.
No, that's 2002. Go back to Colorado. Start, I was already about 3 weeks into my senior year in Kansas in my football season. So I uprooted and moved to Colorado, and then went to school sort of like I didn't hardly ever go to school. By the time I moved in with my mom, it was free reign. I could do whatever I want. But my brother was driving for a drug dealer, and so I would ride around with them and watch him. He'd have, stacks of cash, all the guys.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just bulletproof influence, man. Pulling pins on truth grenades. That's where we are. Hey, so with regards to this shooting in Minneapolis, which we're going to be talking about more here in a minute, but I'm talking about it from the transgender side of things. I appreciate the fact that just in the last hour, FBI Director Kash Patel put a tweet out on his official account. And he said this. Keep in mind, by the way, the shooter's name was changed, legally even at age 17 from Robert to Robin, because he wanted to be identifying as a female. FBI Director Kash Patel says, as we continue to investigate yesterday's barbaric attack from Robert Westman, the male subject, he says, our teams have gathered information and evidence demonstrating this was an act of domestic terrorism motivated by a hate-filled ideology. He says some updates. The subject left multiple anti-Catholic, anti-religious references both in his manifesto and written on his firearms. The subject also expressed hatred and violence towards Jewish people, writing Israel must fall, free Palestine, and using explicit language related to the Holocaust. He wrote an explicit call for violence against President Trump on a firearm magazine, and the FBI investigation is still ongoing. We will employ all of our counter-terror tools to ensure this is a fully investigated and deterred, and as promised, we will continue to update when able. He has labeled it domestic terrorism, rightfully so, and he calls it an anti-Catholic hate crime. which appears to be exactly what it was. I am so glad we do not have the former administration still in office, because if they did, we would have a rush to judgment on anyone who dared to mention that he was transgender. Anyone who ever used his dead name of Robert would be called out for it. And somehow or another, the victims would have brought it on themselves, apparently, and there'd be calls for gun control. That's where we would have been. I am so glad to have someone speaking common sense at the FBI. Whew. Okay. Yeah, there's that. By the way, there was one also, a report. I just seen it on CNN earlier. But they had just a ticker going as they were talking about the shooting. And they said that apparently the shooter had also barricaded several doors to prevent people from getting away while he was shooting through a window, I believe. Am I right, JP, on that? Wasn't he shooting through a window?
Yeah, he just pulled up and started shooting through the big window on the side of the room that they were praying in. So
yeah, okay. Jerry from Decatur says, enjoyed your monologue, Phil. I believe the principle of sowing and reaping is in effect. No matter if it's corrupt politician, teacher, parent, or any person in charge or a position of authority, if they're sowing corruption, they will always reap corruption. The only remedy is to humble ourselves under the hand of God, work with him and sow righteousness and reap good. If the blind lead the blind, both will fall in the ditch. Airborne. Jerry, good text, man. Paul from Decatur says, hey, Colonel, Paul in Decatur, no matter how bad things get, if you're a Christian believer and pray, you are never alone. Stop blaming God. You want to blame someone, blame Adam. He didn't have to eat that apple. Okay, there you go. Shane from Lacey Springs says, prayer is the very reason my granddaughter Ivy is alive and well today. Yes, indeed, Shane. And by the way, I'm glad to see you say that because it reminds me of her. Thank you. I'm glad for the update. For those of y'all that don't know, sweet little Ivy, just a little baby girl, had a heart transplant just weeks ago. So we're glad to hear it. Shane from Lacey Springs also says, God bless all who were involved in yesterday's tragedy, and thanks for what you do, Phil and JP. Thank you, Shane. Herb from Gurley says, prayers are long-range artillery. Minnesota, no problem. Like it. I like it a lot. Jeremy from Madison, Alabama says, 3 reasons to pray are not based on religion. Number 1, science has proven intelligent design of the universe. Number 2, artificial intelligence has acknowledged the existence of an intelligent design. And number 3, speaking your prayer out loud in agreement with another is a form of therapy. Agreed. That's all good stuff, man. Thanks, Jeremy. Connor from Huntsville says, hey, Phil, Connor in Huntsville, the last thing that is being overlooked, and I'm not mentioning it because they were praying children, probably, Jesus followers. Their eternal home is secured. We can be thankful for that. They don't have to put up with any of this foolishness on earth anymore. That's sad, but that's true. But I still think they deserve the opportunity to be loved on by their parents who put them in a good school. So they are on the far side of things, and hopefully suffer unto me the little children is happening right now that Jesus is receiving them. But having had my kids grow up and now seeing my grandkids, I just cannot even imagine that level of pain, because you know where they are, yes, but you know where they could have been in your arms too. So there's that. Tom with all the kids in Huntsville says, wisdom resides not in the things of this world, but in the heart of our Lord. Above, the only way to discern the wisdom is to pray for him to give us guidance. I love this audience. Dave from Athens says, hey, Phil and JP, not sure if you saw this message from yesterday, but there's also a ruffian group on ESPN. If you already have an account, need some ruffians, step up to the challenge. John from Huntsville. There you go. Dave from Athens chiming in. Got John's back. By the way, there's John. He says, amazing monologue, Phil. Definitely one of your best ever. Did you also hear that a protester back in 2020 was shot with a less lethal ammunition by LA deputy sheriff, has been awarded over $2.2 million? Did not hear this. And the daughter got $300,000 for emotional stress. By the way, JP, you joined one of my college football pick'em groups.
I did.
Good. Danny from Pinhook says, prayers are food for the soul. Yes, they are. And let me get a couple more before we go to the break. Jeff from Indiana, he says, Phil, I've come up with a term that describes the mental illness that people who affirm people with gender dysphoria. It's called affirmationism or affirmationists. Yeah, I may take that and run with it, man. He said, I should have it trademarked. I don't know a good lawyer who can do that. Do you? I don't know any good lawyers. Sure, I can do it. Luann from Huntsville says, don't you find it curious that women who change to men don't seem to be flooding men's sports? football, baseball, even weightlifting. Here's a quote to ponder. Quote, if they can make you believe absurdities, they can make you commit atrocities. That's Voltaire. Wow. And Mark from Red Bay says, Shania Twain said it best. Man, I feel like a woman. Dang. All right. Y'all stay tuned. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, hour number 2 coming up.
Him, all the girls wanted to be with him. Pounds of drugs, like what's not to love, like this is, kind of the thing I'm infatuated with. And here's this guy doing this. And so I kind of went to work for him selling a little bit of weed. And then I started getting into cocaine. Cocaine's expensive. In order to do cocaine, you have to sell cocaine. And I always say, when I tell my story, the same thing that makes me good at what I do for a living now, which is sales, networking, and persuasion. It's the same skill set I was using then, the exact same thing. And so I went in a very short amount of time from selling, little bits of marijuana to next thing you know, I'm selling cocaine, and next thing you know, I'm selling lots of cocaine. And in a period of 5 years, I racked up 6 felonies, and all of it was drug or stealing things to buy drugs or getting in a high-speed chase with the cops or whatever. But I, went from selling little bits of marijuana to the point where I was pushing large amounts of cocaine and methamphetamines for cartels in Colorado Springs.
It's before it was all legal out in Colorado.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now they let you take over apartment complexes.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
now you can just bring your gang and have at it.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So, and going through getting ready to sit down with you today, and I've heard your story before, but I've never heard all of your story before.
Sure.
But you didn't just go to prison. You were on the run for a while, and
Sure.
then they caught you swinging on a rope out the window trying to get away from a drug bust.
Yeah.
And I am of the understanding that at some point, Dog the Bounty Hunter was offered the opportunity to track you down, and he declined.
Yes, and I don't think he declined. I don't think he based off of. Well, so I'll just tell the story. That's
You
what
have
we
to.
do.
Now
That's
that
what we
I've
do.
asked
We have to
about
tell
it.
stories. Yeah. So here I am. I've now racked up 6 felonies. That 6th felony was the doozy. Okay, and the 6th felony was, I was already out on bond. I was already on probation, and I'd been up for 3 or 4 days. Found out one of these guys who had informed the cops about some legal activity that I was involved with. Found out that he had just come into some money, and he owed me money, and he also narked on me, right? And so in that world, you don't do that. Those are the rules, okay? You don't do that. If you want to play in this society, you don't do that. Now, a lot of people did, but there was an enforcement mechanism called me, okay? And if you're going to do that to me, I'm going to find you, and I'm going to hurt you. That was the way it worked. And he wasn't the only one that I did that to, but he was the one that ended up telling the cops again. So I went to his house. I'd been up for 3 days, strung out on meth, pound on his door. He answers the door. I said, he's like, hey, man, what's going on? I just immediately said, why'd you tell on me? And I didn't tell on you. I walked into his house, pushed him. Why'd you tell on me? I didn't tell on you. And I just started to beat him relentlessly. And the guy that I was with, so the way that it reads in the charges, and it's because they only wanted me to go down. They didn't care about the other guy that was with me. I was their target, okay, for the cops, law enforcement. I was the one running all these drug rings and theft rings and motorcycle theft rings and all this stuff. So they were after me, and I wasn't going to tell on the guy that was with me. But this is what actually happened versus what if you read the articles online and the charges and stuff. I was tasing him and beating him and tasing him with a taser and beating him, trying to get him to admit that he told on me. Well, the guy that was with me had a blackjack, which is it's not makeshift, like you can buy them. Yeah. It's got like a mechanical spring inside of it with a heavy piece of lead with leather wrapped around it. Yeah. And he hit him square in the forehead with it. Boom, his head explodes. Blood goes everywhere. Was not the intention of that visit, okay? My intention, I actually was friends with the guy and liked the guy, but he had broken the rules. And so I was in there to make sure that he understood that you don't do this. The guy I was with cracked his head open, blood went everywhere. And I'm like, well, at this point we're done. Okay. Like this is over. And after he got hit in the head with that, he admitted that he told on me. That happened. But that was not the intention of this meeting, was to go that serious and that far, but it did. And once it did, I just started grabbing computers and anything that was of value. I told his brother, I said, look, if you guys don't pay us, pay me the money that you owe me, I'm going to be back, and that's going to be you. And I walked out. And so they hit me with attempted murder, aggravated robbery, and extortion. That night I got arrested again.
That's go away charges right there.
Those are go away charges, yeah, for a long time. And it was my 6th felony, right? So my 6th time I've been arrested and charged in separate cases. And so I got arrested that night. I went to court basically, and they dropped the attempted murder down to first degree because it didn't fit. And so my arraignment, I don't know what they call it. You're a lawyer. I'm not. Although after being in prison for a little while, you actually kind of turn into one. But they dropped it to first degree assault. And so I was charged with first degree assault, aggravated robbery, and extortion, and a slew of other things. But those were the heaters. And so I'm in there for 2 weeks, and I get bonded out again. And so now I'm out on several $100,000. No, I think it was like $135,000 worth of bonds, if I remember correctly.
Who posted bond?
There's so many rabbit trails I could go all the way down. I just don't know how interesting they are. There's this girl, I think her name was Lisa, that she was just infatuated with me and thought the world of me. And she went and used a credit card to buy a bunch of Xbox 360s that were out at the time, and then sold them and got the money to bond me out.
No kidding.
No one's ever got that story, Phil. You're the first that got that story. That asked that question. There you go. But yeah, I ended up bonding out, and knew immediately that if I go to court, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to court, which now makes me a fugitive because I missed my court date. Right? I'm on the run. And the plan was, I had a friend, Spider. He and I were supposed to, and Spider's a very bad dude, like very, very bad, Hispanic guy who's part of the Sereno gang. And we were supposed to go down to California with his people and then go into Mexico. That's what they do on the movies. We felt like it was a good idea. Only problem is we never got around to doing it. And so I ended up on a number of occasions, the cops ended up finding where I was, but they didn't have a warrant and they weren't sure. And so there's a couple different ways that I was able to get away when I was on the run.
Yeah.
And that infuriated them. Okay.
This is how long? Like several weeks?
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 weeks. Yep. And so you had, at the time, there was Officer Mork and Officer Gold Branson, which were with Colorado Springs Police Department. But then you had Sergeant O'Driscoll, who was the head of the Fugitive Task Force and Crime Prevention Unit.
You still remember their names?
Yes, I do. And there's a story in that
this?
too. This would have been 2007.
Oh.
Yeah, and so Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, not only was he on the Fugitive Task Force, he was part of the Crime Prevention Unit. So even before I was a fugitive, both Mork and Gold Branson and Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, they were dedicated to bringing me in and taking me down. Okay. Because of, the threat that I posed in running these crime rings or whatever. And, but the Crime Prevention Unit and Fugitive Task Force was ran by Sergeant.
Yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on a thankful Thursday. You know what? I feel like hearing the sound effect. Play it, man.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you. Liking it. Thank you very much for playing that.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being thankful. So let me jump on in. First dipper I've got is called Trans-Mania. Let's talk about, first of all, what happened and who this guy was, just a little bit more about him. So first of all, I will tell you this. His name was Robert Westman. He allegedly changed his name legally to Robin Westman when he was 17. He's 23 years old now. So 17 years old, the paperwork reflects that it says, quote, minor child identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification, according to a court form that was filled out by his mother, Mary Grace Westman. So when he was 17, mom was doing the whole affirming thing and, I don't know, trying to make him better, but it didn't work out, did it? He went down there to the shooting site. By the way, we know right now he had a rifle, a pistol, a shotgun, all of which had been purchased legally. Keep in mind too, gun control laws, let them call for it if they want to, but y'all, Minnesota has some of the most draconian gun control laws anywhere. They've got red flag laws. In fact, if red flag laws actually worked, I'm pretty sure this guy would have been red flagged, but he wasn't. He bought all his firearms legally. Here's the thing. He's sitting in mommy's house, writing manifestos, recording himself saying the most incredible things, decorating his weapons that he bought with basically with, all kinds of slogans about, kill the Jews and kill Trump and where's your God now and all this stuff written on. Where was mom now? I mean, was it one of those, I'll stay out of his room because, I don't want to interfere in his personal space. Listen, I'm not for like being like the overbearing, hovering parent all the time. But you know what? You get involved in your kids' lives. You have to. And you don't mollycoddle illness. You work them through, you talk them through it, you get them counseling when they need it. That's what you do. So yeah, Westman also, by the way, apparently attended the school that he did the shooting at. So we find out now that he had been a student there through the 8th grade. He also worked for a marijuana dispensary at some point. Okay, well, this is... he posted disturbing videos on YouTube, which have now been deleted, although you can still find them on social media if you look, because people were downloading them quick. Police have now served 4 search warrants, is what we know. 4 search warrants. 1 at the crime scene, 3 more at residences in Minneapolis. I don't know what the relation is. Police seized additional writings, hundreds of pieces of evidence is what we understand. It's being said right now that he was a, quote, classic pathway to being an active shooter. A classic pathway. In other words, all the signs were there, and your gun control laws did nothing. I mentioned a moment ago, and I'll just say it again, that this is being treated as a anti-Catholic domestic terrorism incident by the FBI, and I'm glad, because it is. Also kind of weird, I don't know how to explain this because there's no knowledge that we have that he has got like a Russian or Slavic background, but apparently all of his manifestos were written in Cyrillic alphabet. Do you know? I saw you raise your hand. You got any information on that?
There's a corner of the internet that is guys just like him that are very troubled individuals for whatever reason, and they, worship school shooters. They're sort of like a transnational group, and so a lot of their stuff is in Russian, whatever. So there is a corner of the internet of these guys that, and he looks like par for the course of, one of those guys. There's not like a name or anything for, but I mean, it's kind of like dark web-ish, quarter of the internet sort of thing. Yeah. And I'm not fully keen on the full details. I'm kind of aware of its existence because, I'm of that age and on the internet. But yes, that's sort of that's a good clue of who this guy is and what he was doing on the internet and who he associated with. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's very nihilistic, troubled individuals, as you could probably tell.
And they get inside their bubble and they make themselves more troubled by fomenting it among each other.
Yeah. And it foments from, like you said, of lack of attention from parents. I don't know his childhood issues, but it's something happened that, caused him to go down this path. So,
wow. Yeah. So you mentioned something there. One of my other articles here that I've got from a local news channel up there, NDTV, says that he had a morbid fascination with other shooters, other mass shooters, and even had their names written on some of his firearms, like as an ode to them, I mean, and some of the stuff he wrote, and a lot of this matches up with other school or shootings in general, like the Antioch shooting. There's another as well. Yes. So it's becoming more common. Okay. That's, I think I want to know more about that whole weird side of no more in terms of the fact that they're out there, and that needs to be brought out.
Yeah. Well, the problem is not many people are aware of it. I mean, it's just such a niche, part of the internet. And unfortunately, it's a demographic that younger people would be more aware of. I don't know if many of our legislatures know that, that there's such a thing that exists.
Was it the Colorado Springs shooter who called himself non-binary? Wasn't he a part of that? I mean, they call themselves incels. I mean, and they believe that they are hated, and so therefore they turn the hate they feel on themselves back on others.
Yeah,
and they also believe that women would never have anything to do with them, so they call themselves incels, like they're celibate.
Yeah.
Or forced celibate,
involuntarily
celibate. That's it. Yeah, thank you. Wow.
Well, and I'll just say this last tidbit. Whatever your thoughts on this commentator is, but Nick Fuentes did a phenomenal deep dive on this last night that I was watching. He gave great insight on what this corner of the internet, and like the transgenderism is kind of surface level. Like it's just something that these people do. It's an indicator, but the root issue is much deeper.
There's
and
a
darker.
psychosis here.
Yes. So transgenderism is sort of like their expression of it, but the transgenderism is kind of the tip of the iceberg. So
wow. And the Cyrillic alphabet is also one of the indicators, huh?
yeah, it's part of it.
Wow. That's like loads of bizarre right there.
Mm-hmm.
So how about your red flag laws now, Minnesota?
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
I mean,
that guy, you take a look at his, you just walk into his room and look at his journal. I mean, he drew pictures of himself, like looking in the mirror and the devil looking back at him. That seems like a red flag to me. I'm sure a lot of people that are actually not a threat got denied from these red flag laws, but he didn't.
Listen, I can still remember because, Charlene and I both, Charlene spent 15 years or more working at a really good local Christian school. I also taught there and I was on the board there for a while. And I remember more than once there being like a child who drew very unusual pictures like that. And we would actually call the parents and say, I think we need to talk to you because something's going on with little Johnny or little Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And so apparently nobody was doing that in his life at all.
Apparently not. They were signing off on his name changes and all.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Golly. But yeah, Benny Johnson, who I follow on Twitter, who usually does a pretty prolific job of reporting on the social media side of things. He made a point. He named a bunch of, and I did this in my monologue. I cited some of this in my monologue, but he said the pattern is undeniable. The trans movement is radicalizing the mentally ill into becoming violent terrorists who target children for murder. And then he pointed it out. He said the Annunciation Catholic Church shooter, trans. The Nashville Christian shooter at Covenant School, remember that? Trans. The one they wouldn't release the manifesto for. Why wouldn't they? I guess they were afraid that people would go, see, trans. The Lakewood Church shooter, trans. The Colorado Springs shooter, non-binary. The Denver shooter, trans. The Aberdeen shooter, trans. The Iowa high school shooter, trans. And he says radical gender ideology, and I agree with this, is driving violence and targeting innocent people. Enough excuses, enough denial. The threat is real, and it's escalating. It's time for a national intervention. And that's why leadership matters. Now, listen, I am not sitting here bringing some kind of like, let's do the vigilante thing and let's march on them with pitchforks and torches. Let's go get the Frankenstein. And I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is this. They need loving care and concern, but they need the people who are supposed to be providing the loving care and concern to actually provide it. I mean, you can't look at someone and go, oh, you feel like you're a different sex today? I understand. Let me affirm that. That's not normal. It's just not. And by the way, I'm not even talking about the broader, gay lifestyle. I'm not. I'm talking about transgenderism. That's what I'm talking about. You don't get to wake up one day and decide that you were a boy and now a girl. It doesn't work that way. I can't look at this desk I'm sitting at and say, that's a glass desk. No, it's not. It's a wood desk. I don't get to change things like this. That's not reality. The sky is actually still blue. No, it's green. I'm sorry. It's actually blue. That's what you just tell people. Here's reality. I know you don't like reality, but let's talk about why you don't like reality.
And so I'll just add this one bit before we go to break. This was not an ideological incident. This is a spiritual, demonic, evil showing its face incident. And I think that's what a lot of, unfortunately, people on the right, they're trying to make this like an ideological battle, like it's us versus the Democrats, and it's much deeper than that.
It is.
And if you don't attack the root issue of the demonic and evil, this was evil showing its face. I mean, look, on his rifles, he wrote any sort of hate saying slogan, from the Jews to Christians to Trump to everybody. Like, this was just pure hatred, and it's much more than just an ideological fight.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we got to take a break right now. Great point, though. Great point. When we get back, I'll tell you, I've got an article here for Town Hall. There was one New York Post reporter who had all that Cyrillic writing in his manifesto translated. I'll tell you about that, and then something that our own Attorney General Steve Marshall has been working on. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Ended up, they have like unlimited budget, work with the feds, all this other stuff, and so they were on me. And so I got away a couple times, and finally June 19th, 2007, I am in what we deemed my safe house, and Spider had given me a nylon rappelling rope to tie to the bottom of this 70s retro recliner. And he's like, if you got to get out, you go, because the front door is, there's a hallway in these apartments, and then you go from the hallway into the apartment, and the only way out would be down the window, out the window and down on the ground, and it's third story. And I'm like, I'm never going to use that. That's crazy, you know, but I did. Every 18 inches, I tied a double knot, you know, so I could climb like that. And, you know, I woke up June 19th, 2007, not thinking anything, just another day of being on the run. And I was in my living room.
One of your interviews, you said you woke up at 3 p.m.
Yeah, it was that afternoon. And it was that afternoon. I was, again, smoking weed, doing drugs, and, you know, your circadian rhythm gets a little off in that situation. And so woke up that afternoon. And, you know, it's the weird thing that you remember. I was cooking bratwurst and watching the Chappelle Show. And I looked out the window, and the way that it's set up, there's an apartment building here. And every year I go to Colorado Springs and I take my family. And this year I took my 15-year-old son, and he's heard me tell this story a million times. And I'm like, here's the bill. He's just like the building you said. I said, yeah, no, it's because it's where it happened. Okay, like I'm telling you. And we go and we look, you know, and there's an apartment building right here. This is the apartment building I'm in. And I saw the front end of a cop car sticking out. And I knew, okay, they're here. They're here. And so I kind of frantically, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, then all of a sudden I hear, boom, boom, boom. Colorado Springs police, open up. They kick in the door. And I look, it wasn't my door. So I said, they don't know which apartment I'm in. They're kicking in every single door in the apartment on the 3rd floor. All they knew is I was on the 3rd floor. And so you've been in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're clearing rooms as though this was Afghanistan trying to find me. Okay. In an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. I'm like, okay, well, I look at the rope and this is my only option. And so I kick the screen out, throw my backpack out with all my stuff. And the only piece of furniture in the whole place was the TV and the retro recliner. Okay. That was it. And so I wrap the rope around my hand and I jump, boom, and it sticks exactly how it's supposed to. It's, you know, wedged in the window, and I'm hanging there. Well, what I didn't know, in that back parking lot, there was a surveillance van.
Oh, yeah.
That blends in with the rest of the, you wouldn't have known it was a cop car or whatever. It was a surveillance van. And they called it in. You know, someone's trying to jump out the window. I think we got our guy, and then 50 or 60 cops. They weren't going to miss me again. Come swarming from the outside. Like you couldn't see them because they were right here.
So the jig was up at that point.
The jig was up. Yeah, the gun's drawn. Get on the ground, as though I had another option. You know, gravity necessitated that down was the direction I was going to go, and so I unwrapped my hand, fell, and hit the ground. Thankfully, didn't break anything. They put their knee in my back, cuffed me, put me in the back of the cop car, and that was it. June 19th, 2007.
So I'm fascinated by two things in the story.
Sure.
One is you still remember the cops' names.
There's a story for why, but go ahead.
Well, and then I may get back to that story.
Yeah.
But the other is you take your kids and you show them exactly where this happened.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a lot into, you know, you're obviously a different person today.
Sure.
I know the guy who did those things, but I don't know the guy who did those things. Sure. Because you're a different person. But that being said, you're pretty transparent with, and you have 7 kids, by the way.
Yeah.
You're a prolific breeder,
yes.
but nonetheless, you've got a beautiful family, 7 kids, but you're telling them what's happened in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What's can I ask you real quick? What's their response when they hear about Dad before they knew Dad?
This is a great platform to share the gospel with your kids, right? But the older ones, it's a warning. Proverbs talks about the fool. Dad was a fool, right? I was the epitome of the fool, and you know, in Proverbs and really throughout the scriptures, it talks about a fool. And I didn't seek wise counsel. I didn't receive instruction. I didn't receive discipline. I didn't any of those things. I rejected all of it, and this is where I ended up. And so I don't think it's set. So I've got a 15-year-old, got a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. Okay. The 15-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 9-year-old are the ones that really wrap their minds around what I'm talking about when I talk about being in prison and, you know, cops chasing me and that kind of stuff. The rest of the ones are younger, and they're just like, wow, Dad, you used to be bad, but now you're good. You know, like they don't have any rebut. It will eventually form like their understanding, and it's something that I want them to always know. And the thing I always point them to is like, 1, don't be the fool, receive instruction, receive wise counsel, obey God and obey your parents. But also, life isn't perfect.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, by the way, I think I just need to say something real quick before I go to the phones. I think it's a point that needs to be made, that the whole thing about prayer and about, and to JP's point about spiritual warfare and about the things that are happening, let's make sure we're understanding the clarity of what I'm about to say. That Christians do not hate trans people. We don't. We can separate the action from the person, but the reality is it's just the opposite. We care enough about them to want them to get help. That's what it boils down to. We see them living in a lifestyle that really in many ways is pitiful and is awful and is hurtful and does them no good. And we would want better for them. And I believe that I believe I speak for the vast majority of the Christian world when I say that. That being said, let me go to the phones. Is that Kareem? Kareem from Huntsville on the line. Kareem, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing fine today, sir.
Good, man.
But
good to hear from you.
I gotta ask you a serious question.
Ask me.
How many ex-trans people you ever saw?
Ex-trans people. I've seen several. Why?
I've never seen an ex-trans or an ex-gay person, because these people been here forever. And then for us to sit around and condemn them, I'm talking about not only condemn them personally, but to make laws and make them feel like they back, like nobody love them, and back them into a corner. Just imagine if it was your child. Before you start saying, and then say, oh, they need mental help, or they need, this is something a pill is not going to handle.
So
it's nothing new.
I take it from what you're saying, though, you believe then that a man can become a woman or vice versa.
No, I don't believe a man can become a woman. All I'm saying is that these people truly believe that they are who they say they are. So instead of us treating them like human beings, we ostracize them and demonize them. I remember on your show just about every day.
No, I think it's just the opposite, man. I think it's just the opposite. I think that this is something that is so out there, so awful, so wrong, that for us to not point it out and say, by the way, that's wrong, would be wrong on our part. You just don't sit quiet in the face of it. I mean, if somebody's crawling around on the floor claiming to be a dog, you kind of point out they're wrong, right? Or if
but who's claiming to be a dog? They are talking. I think y'all mixing sexuality and sex.
No, we're not.
Claiming to be
we're claiming that people who have a mental health issue, which is called gender dysphoria, they tried to name it transgenderism so they could give it a new definition, but the reality is it's still gender dysphoria.
Everybody's always trying to put a label on it. Why don't you try asking people who are actually trans what's going on with them? But instead of doing that, all you do is sit back and demonize them and try to ostracize them from every aspect of society.
Okay.
What do you expect people to do?
So let me just. So what you're telling me is what I really need to do is go ahead and say, accept it, Phil. They've been here a long time. You think so? I don't think they have. By the way, I think this is a fad. I think this is something that has grown up, and that somehow or another the left made this a fad, and they gave it an opportunity to. And they, it absolutely is. And so
it's in the Bible.
Homosexuality is not what we're talking about. We're talking about transgenderism. It's different. Even the vast majority of the gay community thinks that transgenderism is ridiculous. Most of them know you can't wake up one day and change your chromosomes.
Ex-trans person. I've never met an ex-gay person.
You need to go online. You need to go online. There's testimonies of people who came out of that lifestyle, absolutely talking about what a trap it was.
And I put money on it because
they have testified before Congress. They have testified before Congress. Kareem, they've testified before Congress that they literally are saying, no, this is absolutely harmful, and they are there.
Listen, that does not mean that they don't feel the same way. They just choose not to participate in it anymore. But you cannot reach these people by demonizing them.
There's no demonizing. There's no demonizing. Listen, if somebody has an eating disorder, if somebody is depressed, if somebody has anxiety, schizophrenia, or they're bipolar, if somebody has alcoholism, if they are an addict, are we supposed to sit back and go, don't say anything? They might take it hard. What you do is you actually intervene. You don't create a culture. You don't create a culture of acceptance and so-called affirmation for things that are wrong. You want to rob a bank tomorrow? You want to
are not going anywhere, man.
They are.
The point is that it's them.
They
do has no effect on my life.
Well, then you don't have to say anything if you don't want to, Kareem, but I actually own the microphone, and I feel like part of my job is to impact culture. And You want to go back.
And this is
You
the result.
listen, man. You want to take the
result,
lazy. You want to take the lazy, don't intervene kind of route on life. Guess what? You'll get more of it. But the reality is, this show does not stand for anything but truth, and we will speak truth all day long. So, that being said, I got to let you go because now we're up against the break. How much time have I got for the break? 10 seconds. All right. Listen, Kareem, you call back anytime, but you're probably going to lose the argument every time, especially when you do stuff like say, you shouldn't say anything because, they've been here a while. So what? So have rapists and murderers. Guess what? We say something. So have people who are depressed. Guess what? We say something. Guess what? If you don't say something, you get more of the same. So the reality is a society that will accept something as just the new normal is a society that gets a whole lot of that. And guess what? Then somehow or another, it becomes the normal. And I got news. Transgenderism, separated from the person, the action of transgenderism, the belief in it, is not normal. That's just a scientific fact. And if you go to school and try to tell your biology teacher it is, you'll fail the test. How about that? Wow, more of that. Guess what? Coming up, Buttram and Lee, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you stray, you can never stray so far that God can't get you, right? And if God saved me, he can save anybody. And that's not cliche. It's literally, let me tell you about something. But again, specifically my 15-year-old, I drive him all around Colorado Springs. There's not a corner I didn't commit a felony in that city, okay? And I drive him, and I'm like, I did this here, I did this here, I did this here, I did this here. Like, this is who I was. You need to know and understand that, right? And so...
Proverbs 19, raise up a child the way they should go.
Yep.
When they get old, they won't depart from it.
Yep.
All right, brother. So you, the jig was up. They got you. The officers whose names you still recall were a part of the task force that brought you in. And you're staring at 6 felonies prior before you even got to this point. And now you've got this stack of felonies and you're looking at 384 years potentially.
Sure.
So you're looking at life in prison at that point.
Correct. Yeah.
But you negotiated.
Yeah.
Did you negotiate for yourself, or did your lawyer do a good job?
It's a mix, but there's a bunch between that. But yeah, it gets into mediation. But there was 9 months between then, and in those 9 months, they take me to county jail. I'm facing 384 years in prison. At least that's how my public defender described it, because how it works, and the numbers are shaky in my head. But I have to do the math. But either way, each charge that I was charged with gets doubled because I was on probation and on bond, so they can double it, so they enhance it.
Yeah.
And then they times it. They can times it by 4 because it's the habitual criminal. Yeah. Right. And so I can break it all down with math or whatever, but the habitual criminal. So if you have 3 felonies, they call that. I'm not going to say what they call it. It's the B word, the little B word. And if it's 4 or more, they quadruple your sentence. And they call that the big B word, okay, habitual. Anyway, so I was at 6, so I'm times 4, and then so they stack, and then they times it by 4, and then that's where that comes from.
This is state, not federal, right?
State, Colorado State, yep. Colorado State Prison.
It didn't wind up being 384 years, but you still got a pretty stiff sentence.
Got a pretty stiff sentence, and the transformation really began in county jail. So I was in county jail for 9 months. Basically holding out, and that's part of your negotiations in county jail. Is like, well, I'll just sit here until you bring me a deal that I want, right? And they'll only do that for so long. But it is, some people just want to get in there and they plea and they go to prison, but I was gonna, bide my time or whatever. Well, I'm now in county jail thinking I'm gonna go do the rest of my life in prison. That's how I'm seeing this. And so I'm in there thinking I have to create this reputation of being a bad dude, so when I get to prison, people won't mess with me. And so I do, and I'm hanging out with all the wrong people in there. I catch one assault case. They put me in the hole, then send me to another unit. I'm there for a little bit. They bring in another guy that had told on one of my friends. And I had to go beat him up really, really bad. Caught another assault case. So I caught 2 assault cases in county jail. So on top of all my other stuff, I caught 2 more assault cases. They were misdemeanor assaults, but they're still assault cases. And they put me in administrative segregation after that. So they're like, okay, you don't play nice with others.
That's solitary, basically.
Solitary,
right?
Correct. Exactly what it is. Yep. Solitary confinement. You're in a cell by yourself for 23 hours a day. You get an hour out to make a phone call and take a shower, maybe do some push-ups or whatever, and you go back to your cell. That's what you get. And I was in there for about 4 months. Okay. And so it was 9 months total, 5 months out, 4 months in ADSEG or solitary. And in that stay in solitary, God began to open my eyes. I don't believe he saved me yet, but he opened my eyes to the fact it was my fault that I was in there. And this is huge. I was just reading Rick Burgess's new book last night because I'm going to interview him later today. But it like that was one of the chapters when it talks about just rugged accountability. Like you have to take accountability for your actions if you're ever going to repent. And this was the beginning of me realizing, because up to that point, I blame my mom for my circumstances. I blame my dad. I blame the judge. I blame the cops. Da 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 da.
No more victim.
Exactly. And but what was wild though, I really believed I was a victim. Like I wasn't just saying that to get out of trouble. I really believed it, which is weird. But God, in his mercy, opened my eyes like, no.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This show goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga and Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn. Straight across the line from there to what we call, once again, Fort Benning and big old patches of North Georgia, Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. And that's just the radio. Then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web, logging into the live stream on X and Rumble and YouTube and Facebook and our website, rightsidemedia.org. And then, oh, by the way, podcasters who catch it after the fact, all said and done, wherever you catch the show, just know that we see it and we know it, and you're the only reason why we do it. We appreciate you. We love you, and we're very thankful for all of you. All right, lesson. There's a thing we do every Thursday. On Thankful Thursday, we have people we're thankful for who come on in and participate in the show. And so, we're going to jump on that. We usually call it Butters and Lee, but somehow or another, we let Butters get out of town for a day. But that being said, we have some proxies. So let me do the quick introductions. Coming to us as the Secretary of Common Sense, that pundit of publishing Podacity, that would be the none other than Scott Buttram. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you, Phil?
I'm good. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for making time. And also, looking northward, that diva of divine punditry, that person who has lots of opinions and is unafraid to share them, that would be Lee from Huntsville. Hey, Lee, you there?
I'm here.
You know what? That means we have a quorum. Hit me some whoop whoops. All right, Buttram and Lee. For those who don't know, the uninitiated, the way this works is first round, I ask them questions. Second round, they ask me questions, and I just see if I got an answer. So tell you what, I've been doing this for a while on the show. We're going to take this one again. Let me ask y'all. So in the wake of yesterday's school shooting up in Minnesota, do you anticipate there would be any effort on the part of legislators, whether here or elsewhere, to like upfund budgets to provide like assistance for school resource officers or other safety measures? Are we going to see some kind of like a response, which I hate to say sometimes it's often after the fact, but nonetheless, do you see legislative response? I'm going to go with you first, Scott. What do you think?
I will be surprised if we don't see a response. There always seems to be, some tokenism toward trying to appease this group or that group. And I think you may have asked it, or somebody asked it earlier, why don't we ever hear them just come out right out and say, let's appeal the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. So they never go to the one thing that could actually change the game. But this is going to come down, and I'm going further than that. This is going to come down to a state that has some of the strictest gun laws in America.
Yep.
That did not bother to enforce them.
Yeah, and there you have it. I mean, if gun control laws really worked, Minnesota would not have had this incident happen. And they even have all the way into the red flag law kind of situation. And this guy had every red flag in the world. Lee, what do you think? Are we going to wind up seeing legislators legislating a response to this, like school resource officers?
Probably so. I'm not sure that it's really going to help. I think people don't like to feel helpless. And right now, this type of thing makes you feel helpless. But it's hard to anticipate crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't know that a resource officer would have made any difference in this situation.
Yeah, and I can't say that it would either. I will tell you, while I was in office, and I've forgotten, it must have been in the wake of, oh gosh, which one of the big shootings? But anyway, while I was still in office, we actually did pass something that I thought was really significant. Every school in a district, in a county or whatever, has to provide local law enforcement with schematics of their schools, so that if they ever have an active shooter situation, the response teams automatically have a map to use to find out where to go in the school. I thought that was significant, and it was a cost. We upfunded the budget for part of that, if I recall. But
I'm kind of surprised they didn't already have that.
well, I know there's a lot of things. That's one of those things too. I remember saying, I'm surprised we don't already have this, because that makes too much sense. I mean, can you imagine being a hostage rescue or a SWAT team and you don't have a schematic of the school? But Scott, you've watched the legislature a lot. You think we're going to wind up seeing something in Alabama or just other places?
I don't think we'll see anything in Alabama. I think, maybe you see something else in Minnesota. Again, I think it's going to be more tokenism than anything else, just to say, hey, we did something. But
Yeah.
I mean, again, there were laws in place, laws were broken. To get this, you mentioned this is one of the few states with red flag laws. If that guy wasn't a walking red flag, who is?
Yeah. I mean, the guy was
If you watch
way
the
out there.
video, he was so creepy in that video. It made your skin crawl.
Well, I think creepy. In fact, JP even said earlier, and I agree with him, that this was a spiritual thing as much as anything. It really is.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's go to another question, because this is blowing my mind. I didn't even see this coming. I'll be honest with you, and I'm not sure how I missed it. But Federal District Court Judge Anna Manasco, who was appointed by Trump here in the Northern District of Alabama, just ruled, I think in the last 24 hours, that the Alabama State Senate District's map has to be redrawn again. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the ruling is we need to incorporate more race. And I keep thinking that race is not going to be the issue. So here's my question for you. Is this ever going to end? And are we going to have to really redraw the maps again? Scott, I'm going to you first again. What do you think about this?
Okay, on behalf of our mutual friend, Phil, I feel obligated to say first and foremost, we keep referring to Manasco as a Trump judge. She was a Trump judge or a Trump appointee, but she had to be agreed upon by Doug Jones. So we have a friend in our little chat group.
Well, there you go.
That there was a hitch to that catch, and there it is. I think Judge Manasco is probably moving Alabama closer and closer and closer to a full-blown U.S. Supreme Court hearing, because I think she is way past the line of activism, judicial actions on her part, and I think she's probably setting us up for the long-term win here.
I didn't even realize, Scott, that we had this case still ongoing. I thought this had all been had been decided.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
So I was kind of shocked.
At this point, this looks like judicial overreach, but you're the one with the law degree.
We think they're Lee from Huntsville. I mean, are we looking at having to redraw maps, and how is this going to impact things?
I'm with you. I don't understand how this wasn't settled when we just redrew it. So I'm unsure of why you can come back to this well again and again and again. I feel like that. Yeah, this is activism from the bench. And at what point do we? And if Doug Jones had anything, to do with choosing this woman, it explains everything. I'm just saying that. I mean, tell me how Texas can get away with doing what they're doing right now and redrawing and eliminating seats in places like Houston and all that. How can they get away with doing that? And we literally have been beat to death with it.
Well, it's the Voting Rights Act. I mean, the Voting Rights Act presumes upon Alabama that we're always wrong. And what's interesting is the Voting Rights Act was put in place in an effort to protect against racism, and yet now the standard seems to have flipped, and we're being told we're not considering race enough. It's a standard that I'm not sure is able to even be met. And until we get rid of I don't even know where to end with this thing. But I think, in fact, you said a minute ago something about we just finished redoing this. The districts we redrew were congressional, so that's why we got Shamari Figures in now, the Democrat.
Right.
But this is going to be state senate, which I didn't even see on the radar. So was it? I think it's Will Barfoot, and it's down there around Montgomery Pike Road, right? Is that where it is, Scott?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, so that's like State Senator Will Barfoot, who's a great state senator, by the way, very conservative. I think he's chair of judiciary, and now all of a sudden he's got to look and see whether his district's going to get redrawn. This is just nuts. I don't know where it is.
I don't get it, Phil. I don't get it. How can they say you have to draw it, and gerrymander it? And you've seen some of these districts where they've done this, that they look insane. They're just, all over the place. And my question is, how is that legal? Because that's not. We should have pretty much even districts just for population.
Well, I also saw, I agree. And I saw, yes, we should by population. Wouldn't that be amazing? In fact, I remember going through reapportionment, and the thing was, we literally would say it's population. And we would also say it's also about trying to keep communities intact to the extent we can. And I feel like the courts never care about that anymore.
Well, the irony is the gerrymandering they were most opposed to in the House districts was the gerrymandered district that the Democrats drew and required Joe Reed's approval before they could even use that district. So it was completely done by Democrats or minority Democrats. And now that's the one they're in court fighting about. So
all right.
It's just bizarre to me.
Listen, don't ever come on my show and try to apply one standard. That's not the way this works. The world doesn't work that way. Everybody knows double standards are the way we have to live. No, I refuse to accept that. Thank you. All right, listen, that's it. That's round one. My, that went fast. Round one with Buttram and Lee. And we're going to come back in a minute, flip the script. They asked me a question, and I just hope that I have the answers. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is your fault. Sure, does your mom and your dad play a role? And oh yeah. But your choices got you here. They didn't beat that guy up. They didn't jump out the window. They didn't, sell drugs. They didn't do those things. You did those things. Yeah. And so when I realized that my bad choices created the bad circumstances, that was extremely liberating, because what it meant is that I was free to make good choices that would then create good circumstances. And it was like this epiphany that went off in my brain. And so as much as you can in a cell by yourself, I began to start taking ownership of my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, decisions, all that kind of stuff. So much so that my family really began to because I would have a phone call a week. That's all they would give me. Not that I could call them every day on my hour out if I wanted, but my family would pick up the phone once a week. They'd cut me off. I'd burned every bridge.
Wow.
And in those weekly phone calls, my family started to notice a huge change in my attitude.
Who'd you call?
My grandma Barb.
Okay.
Yep. And I would call my grandma Barb, and usually it would be on Sunday night, and my mom would be over there, and my brother would be over there, and and so they'd pass the phone around or whatever, and I'd talk. But they specifically, my grandma Barb is like, something's changed in him, and everyone, and a lot of people in the family told grandma she was crazy. You just got a soft spot for Brian, whatever. But she's like, no, I feel like something's changed. And
your dad's mom or your mom's mom?
That's my mom's mom.
Okay.
Yep. Meanwhile, my dad's mom, the one that was teaching Sunday school for Miss K, Scott Beeson, when he interviewed me, said, who was praying for you? It was a good question. I said, well, Betty Dawson was. And lots of credit goes to her for that. But Grandma Barb, she began to really believe in me and believe that there was a change that had happened, so much so that she, so in this time period, that 4 months I'm in there, I guess about 3 months into my ADSEG stay, my public defender came and said, okay, Brian, the district attorney, she was like really excited to give me this deal like it was a good one.
Your attorney was?
Yes, public pretender. And she comes and says, Brian, this is great. If you sign this deal, you're only going to get 32 years with a crime of violence. And I'm like, amazing. When you're 23, 384 and 32, there's not a lot of difference, right? And so I was not real excited about that. So I called my grandma and I said, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. Because the way it works in Colorado, it's way different than it is in Alabama. On a 32-year sentence with a crime and violence sentence enhancer, which is another way that you have a crime of violence. So they stack your sentences, then they aggravate it, and then they multiply it. So it's basically they're just going to throw everything they can at you. If you go to trial, and she explains this to me, if you go to trial, this is what they can do to you. But I tell my grandma I'm going to prison for the rest of my life, and she reaches out to these attorneys. She's got a little bit of money. She doesn't got a lot of money. She just reached out to these attorneys. They're like 60 grand, 120 grand, 150 grand to represent. You know, he's got 6 felonies.
I'm underbilling myself apparently as an attorney.
Yes. Well, if you get into criminal law and you got a guy with 6 felonies, you should probably charge him. But they're like, you know, and she's like, well, I can't afford any of that. And I said, go talk to Jeff Barker. Jeff Barker's got a great reputation for being kind of an up and coming new lawyer who's just really, really good. And she goes and sits down with him, and he's like, look, best I can do is $10,000. And if he goes to trial, I need another 10. My grandma says, I don't have another 10. He's like, well, he ain't going to trial, so I'm not that worried about it. Right. So he's like, okay, $10,000. And so he ends up becoming my attorney. And this is, we're a little bit long for him. So I'm going to go into some of this because this is really cool. I've never told this part of the story in any media hits. And so, now I'm up against the wall when I try to retain this attorney. The next day, I've got to take my plea or I've got to go to trial. So they've got witnesses showing up for my trial that day. So if I don't take the plea, I go to trial.
You're down to knuckle dragging.
Down to knuckle dragging. And you're an attorney. You kind of know how some of this stuff works. Yeah. The judge says, you don't get a new attorney, buddy. No, he's not your attorney. Your attorney is this lady, and you either sign the plea or you go to trial. I'm like, my grandma's like, my new supposed to be attorney's like, and the public defender comes over and she's like, hey, I don't know how this happened, but one of the witnesses in the case got stuck in traffic or whatever, and she's not going to be able to be here. She has to get back to work. And so they had to delay it, and they punted for 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, I'm able to have him retain, and he gets me into a mediation hearing. And in the mediation hearing, this is really cool too, negotiation tactics. They were never able to. So what a mediation is, they have a retired judge. His name was Judge Toth. I'd be in one room with my attorney is how it's supposed to work. And it's supposed to be at the courthouse. And I'm in one room. The district attorney's in another room. I'm with my attorney, and Judge Toth goes back and forth. Okay. I think
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, so I'm going back to the phones right now. We got a round of Buttram and Lee. Scott Buttram and Lee from Huntsville. This is where they ask me questions, and I just hope that I have an answer. Buttram, I'm going to go with you first. Pray tell, what do you have for me?
The umpteenth Alabama Public University has been caught circumventing DEI laws. Alabama, Auburn, I think the University of West Alabama, I think this was North Alabama. I can't remember who they caught last night.
Yeah.
It has happened repeatedly. And I'll remind you, Phil, from the moment this law was passed, people were screaming. They're just going to change the signs on the door and the job description.
Yep.
They will not stop doing what they're doing. We have video evidence, school after school after school after school. We know legislators have been meeting privately and quietly behind closed doors with these universities, encouraging them to come in line. It ain't working.
Well, it's going to take the power of the purse, bro. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take somebody actually.
My question. Is it time for a come to Jesus bill to be pre-filed by Danny Garrett and Arthur Orr?
Yep, that and public flogging. I think that's what the reality is.
Yeah.
I think that's all it's going to. I mean, listen, first of all, they should be absolutely embarrassed. I mean, West Alabama and North Alabama both caught on video. I mean, at what point do you not realize that if someone asks you that question, oh, I'm sorry, do you have DEI? Well, we can't talk about it, but let me tell you. And next thing you know, they're on a video. I mean, what a knucklehead. So this one is, University of North Alabama. I actually had the article on my desk already. I was going to talk about it later. But you've got UNA's, what's her name? Her name's Allison Bergner, at UNA. and she's literally saying this is what we do. We just kind of change the name. And I'm thinking, first of all, call them on the carpet. And yes, I agree with you. There has to be some penalty attached. They have got to lose some funding, or they've got to lose some prestige, or they've got to lose some charter. Something's going to have to happen, or they will continue to flaunt. And by the way, this law has been upheld. All right. This is not something that is like currently before the Supreme Court. State has a right to pass this law. They did. And if they don't want to get in line, but there are no penalties, then why? We're going to have more video if that keeps going.
Yeah. These are state employees flaunting state law.
That's right. Absolutely. Just blowing it off like, could care less. So first, on the one hand, it's hilarious. On the other, it's maddening. So yeah. And then I still like the idea of public flogging. I say bring that back too. Let's do it. All right. Lee from Huntsville, what question do you have for me?
Well, first, I do want to say I agree. You have to hit them where it hurts because, as you can see, they don't have any fear of being exposed.
Yeah.
This is where, these old the communism went into the universities years and years and years ago, and this is what it's turned into. They don't care, and they don't think anybody's ever going to do anything to them.
Well, there's that. All right. What question you got?
So this, a group of people, including celebrities and everybody else, raised about $100 million for the fires in California for all the houses in the Pacific Palisades and a few other places, right?
Right.
And come to find out that none of that money was spent on fires.
Yeah.
On helping anyone get over the fire, helping people, and my question for you is, was this a sort of a Democrat, don't let a tragedy go to waste thing? Let's go and beg money from people so we can spend on whatever we want. Which I think it was when you see all the nonprofits, which is just code for, total cheat.
Yeah.
And is it legal?
I don't think it's legal. And I think it needs to be investigated because there are laws against scamming, and there are laws against raising charitable funds for so-called charitable purposes for which those funds are never used. And if I don't know if any public funds went into it, but if they did, that's also got to be questioned. But if people gave money for something, believing they were bringing relief to others, and that relief never manifested itself, then there absolutely deserves to be an investigation. And if there was any NGO involved, any nonprofit organization that was sort of scamming, just basically getting over on, then they need to consider losing their 501c3 status. So yeah, there's absolute laws against scamming. I mean, you hear about it all the time, like, the Attorney General is now investigating where someone, was scamming elderly trying to get their money. Well, that's exactly what this is. They were preying upon the consciences of people, asking them to give money to a cause. They raised a ton of it, and none of it got there. $100 million. It's also, in my opinion, just an indictment on California once again. You look at this and go, come on, California. Can you just, where's the common sense? Can you just please? The people lost everything. And but it was.
Don't you think?
Go ahead.
Don't you think it's going to influence people donating? Like the next tragedy, people are going to be like, well, the money ain't going to make it. You know what I mean? Like, it puts in doubt any type of major or high level fundraising.
It can. That's one of the, and I don't know that there will be a legal precedent for that, but the law often refers to that as having a chilling effect on other behavior. So if it has a chilling effect on the benevolence of others to want to support. But here's the other thing too. I would just say, y'all really got to look at who you give money to. So if you got a group claiming to be raising money for this great thing, and oh, by the way, that great thing is brand spanking new, fresh off the shelf, they just made it yesterday, maybe you want to give to something else like Samaritan's Purse or the Red Cross or something that actually has some, credibility. Anyway, you got any thoughts on that, Scott?
Well, again, no law degree here, but it's one of those things that I look at and I just, how can it not be illegal? I mean, I just don't understand how you can take people's money under false pretenses. And if it's not illegal, it should be. But you got the law degree, and you seem to think it is. So,
but Scott,
I hope you're right.
But Scott, you may not have a law degree, but you're the Secretary of Common Sense.
Well, from a common sense standpoint, this is easy.
All right, you guys.
Rear ends in jail. I mean, that's easy.
If y'all want giggles, go look up the nonprofits that all this money went to.
Oh,
You
no.
can see the list of it have nothing to do with fire whatsoever.
And I wonder how many of those nonprofits had state legislators and others on their boards of directors, if you know what I'm saying.
That's
Yeah, come on. All right, that's it. We're up against the break. Scotty Buttram, thank you for sitting in today for Butters. We appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Lee from Huntsville, as always, we love you. Thank you so much. That's Buttram and Lee. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
8 years. Well, we think you should get 32. Well, I think I should get 10. I think, it's basically like horse trading. Okay. Well, we couldn't get our calendars to line up to get it done at the courthouse. So she had to come to the county jail on Martin Luther King Day on her day off. Okay. And she's in there in her pajamas, the deputy district attorney. She's in there in her pajamas. She's absolutely pissed that she's there. And I can see this. I'm like, she doesn't want to be here. I've got 384 years. I've got nowhere to go. And she obviously doesn't want to be here. So I just kept dragging and dragging and dragging.
We discovered years ago the best time to buy a car is right before the staff leaves for a holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's like, go, go, go.
So you're in that mode right now. All right. She's in her pajamas.
She's in her pajamas. It's snowing outside. And she just doesn't want to be there. And so I keep dragging and keep counteroffering. And she loses. And she says, that's it. 15 years with the crime of violence. That's my final offer. No way with the violence in your crime and the assault cases that you've caught in county jail, these 2 extra assault cases, will I ever drop this crime of violence? And so on a 32-year sentence with a crime of violence, you're going to do 24. Okay. So that matters. It's a huge, you're going to do more of your time.
Yeah.
And then on a nonviolent, you're going to do maybe a third of your time or less. Okay. So I'm heavy focused on that crime of violence. Okay, we got her down to a decent year range. And I don't know where this came from. It had to have been a God thing. And I looked at my lawyer. I said, you don't tell Judge Toth anything. I said, you walk in there to that district attorney, go tell her that, my client doesn't want to end up in he wants to change his life. He doesn't want to end up in a maximum security prison with swastikas all over his face. He wants to change his life. He's willing to give you a year if you drop the crime of violence. And the way their thing works is I get 16 instead of 15, cha-ching. And all of a sudden, all that, conviction about crime of violence just went out the window.
So she got a trophy, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And so I gave her the year, which is that's good for her. So she drops the crime of violence. And I get 16 years with no crime of violence is what I ended up getting sentenced to. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that
I
is
was
crazy. You are into sales.
Yeah. And I was the happiest person ever to be sentenced to 16 years. Yay, 16 years in prison. But again, everything's relative when you face it to 32 or 384. Yeah.
All right. You said in one interview I saw with you, I've forgotten, it's some folks that you had known, but they have their own podcast, Emily and somebody else. I've forgotten the guy's name, the husband and wife team.
Chris and Emily, yeah.
Yeah, Chris and Emily. But at one point you said in that solitary confinement where you began having that epiphany about accepting responsibility for your own actions and you're not a victim of that, you felt like God had thumped you.
Yes.
But you still weren't there yet.
Yeah.
But then you started meeting and hanging out with a guy who, in your words, what I saw was he began to drop seeds of the gospel in your life.
100%.
And was that in prison? Was that in county jail? Where was
prison.
That? That was prison.
Yeah. So here I am. God thumps me on the head and shows me it's my fault.
Right.
Shortly after that, I get into this negotiation hearing.
Right.
My heart's softened to the idea of God and him working in my life.
Because he has been.
Because he has been. And then I get 16 instead of 32, so now I'm looking at getting out in 5 years instead of 24 or never. So I knew God had moved. And so I'm like, okay. But I was always open to God. I always prayed to God. I always knew that God was real. I had some experiences in church growing up that were bad experiences, but good experiences. I don't know how to really describe it. These people had something that I wanted, but I also saw how judgmental and kind of hypocritical that they were. Yeah. And so I was just like, but I knew that God was real. And so I prayed. When I was a kid, I prayed. Through my addiction, I prayed. When I was a fugitive, I prayed a bunch. And when I was in county jail, I prayed even more. Wondering about what my sentence was. I knew God was real. But you know, I didn't understand how Jesus factored into it, and no one ever really taught me about Jesus. So
Yeah.
I was agnostic. I knew that God was there, but I didn't understand how it worked,
I get
right?
that, yeah.
And so I get to the first prison I get to is called Huerfano County Correctional Center, which is in Walsenburg, Colorado. You go in there, you know, you got in Colorado you wear greens, and so you got your greens on, and you've got a couple extra pairs of greens and a couple pairs of state issued underwear, you know, like a cup and a spoon, and you walk into your unit, and the thing slams behind you, and you're now in your unit. It's, you know, got 120 guys in there. You're like, okay, what's about to happen? You know, because the new guy comes in, fish, you know, fresh fish. And here comes this big, huge dude with a Semper Fi tattoo on his arm.
Oh, former Marine, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, always a Marine, they say.
True.
I've made the mistake of calling him a former Marine and been corrected 17 times. So, he walks up and reaches out and shakes my hand. He says, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian, and this is a faith pod." And so all the movies that were going off in my head about the doors slamming and someone coming up to stab me having to fight to see if I was tough, like there's all the things that I thought could have, would have, should have. But this big burly huge dude who definitely could have beat me up is like, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian. This is a faith pod." That wasn't on the, you know, on the
bingo
prediction
card.
list. Correct.
Yeah.
Not on the bingo card. Yep. And I'm like, okay, Charles, what is a faith pod? And he goes, "Man, we do discipleship in here, and you know, we do Bible studies, we do discipleship, and I take seminary classes on the weekends, and you know, we do praise and worship every single morning." And they did, and
He's saying words you don't even know.
yeah, and I'm like, I have to get out of here immediately. That was my response to that.
Put you in the cult ward.
Get me out of here. You ever seen Happy Gilmore when? Anyway, there's the scene with the lady in the old folks' home where she falls and "Get me out of here." But that's how I felt. I was like, I got to get out of here. But it's prison, and it turns out you can't get out of there. Who knew? And so I was stuck, and it was a good thing. And Charles really just became my friend. He didn't browbeat me. He didn't, you know, he wasn't over the top. He was my friend, you know. And you know, you get in there, you don't have coffee, you don't have soups, you don't have, you know, sweats, you don't have any of that stuff. And so he gave me, you know, all those things. Like, "Here, you need some of this, you need some of this. Hey, if you need anything, let me know." So he just became my friend, and his conversation would turn to a subject or a situation. He would kind of Socratically ask me questions.
He would weave Jesus into it.
And he would weave Christ into the questioning and say, "Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about that?" And I remember one of the funniest ones he did was, you know, this is pre-saved Brian in prison, okay? And I'm talking about, you know, girls and having sex with girls and all this other stuff. And Charles just looks at me, he's like, "But wouldn't it be like so much more beautiful if like you just didn't have sex again until you got married?" And I died laughing so hard and just pointing at Charles like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But you know what? You know, flash forward, that's exactly what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
And it was because of that question that happened before I got saved that Charles did. So he's or go ahead.
No, I got to say, so the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on a thankful Thursday. You know what? Since we're thankful for our next guest too, I want to hear the sound effect. I want to play it. Let's go ahead and play it right now. Start it off. Go.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you. There it is. Thankful Thursday. I'm liking that sound effect, man. I tell you what else. I'm thankful for the fact that we have someone coming on who is, listen, she's like a refugee right now from the Dale Jackson show. She's on the line. Emily Hayes, how are you doing?
I'm well, Uncle Phil. How are you?
I am good. I am good. And for those who are live streaming, we got her on video and everything.
I told JP, I said, you'll look into my home studio / the guest bedroom. So welcome home.
That works. I'm liking it. Funny story. I won't tell you who it was because the person would get really mad if I did, but I know somebody who was doing a Zoom interview for a job and sort of did the test with the camera, make sure everything looks good. They can't see the unmade bed in the background, except what she didn't know was that when the interview started, the camera almost like kind of like panned out. And all of a sudden there she is doing an interview with her unmade bed right behind her, and still got the job though.
If you yeah, so I literally just had a moment like that. Because if you're on the live stream, you just saw Margot come in here for me to open a pack of gummies.
Tell Margot, hey.
I will. I told her, I said, Mom's got to go do some radio. And she said, with Mr. Dale. And I said, no, with Uncle Phil. And she said, okay, Mom.
Hey, let me ask you, I want to change this. I want to, you called in for another purpose, but I want to get you on current events for a minute.
Okay.
So Minneapolis, horrible situation.
Nightmare
situation. You're the parent of a small child. You've also been really involved in a Christian school. Amazing thing for me to. So were we, my family, very much so. My wife worked 15 years at Westbrook Christian. I taught a class there myself. I was on the board there. Our kids grew up there. Went to chapel there all the time. I spoke at chapel there a lot. I cannot imagine the idea that these kids were in mass at their school and that happened. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it hits really close to home for me. You know, our plan with Margot this entire time has been that once she's old enough to start at our church's school, that she was going to go there. When I was young and we moved up from Birmingham to Coleman, I went to 5th and 6th grade there and loved it. And of course, it's my grandparents' church. It's our church. It's a place that is very familiar to us, feels like home, is home. And have always felt safe there. I've never had any reason to doubt and appreciate all the safety measures that they have in place for the school as well as the church. And those have tightened up over the years. You know, access to the school, especially after COVID, was really locked down. So to hear that, you know, knowing the way that our church is set up, and then hearing that this coward stood behind stained glass to shoot into the church.
Yeah.
It really gets, I mean, I can't help but relate it to our everyday life. It gets me in the gut because I know where my baby sits and I know where the big stained glass is behind the altar, and we have stained glass on the side. Now our stained glass is up high, and, you know, God forbid that ever happen here, but it's just, you know, as a parent, your mind starts running through all these scenarios. Like, how would I get to my baby if this happened here? And what would I do? So all the images I've seen, all the like, I saw the letter that the shooter wrote, and it just leads me back to something that I've been a big in my own little world, a big proponent of for the last several years, is the lack of mental health access. Because this is in that letter, regardless of if someone truly believes they're trans or not and needs to transition, you know, taking that out of it, if you look at that letter that was written, depression, anxiety, the pain of depression and anxiety, which is real. I've had family members suffer from this, and it can be physically painful. And to not, okay, you want to be trans, but if you're telling me you're depressed, you need to go talk to somebody. Now, your depression is probably spinning off from having this identity crisis and body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
But start tackling the root of the problem. And the root of the problem was not a bunch of school-aged children in mass.
I got to tell you, I've got an article here from townhall.com that I didn't even get to when I was doing this earlier in the show, but it is something you said just reminded me. He wrote a bunch of his manifesto stuff in Cyrillic. It's almost like he was using it like code but there's a reporter from the New York Post that actually had it translated. And at one point he said he decided that the killing of children of innocent civilians would bring him the most joy. Another time he said, in his own words, he said he had been suicidal for several years, but he wanted to take others out with him. Another time he said, I don't want to do it to spread a message. I do it to please myself. I do it because I'm sick. And I don't think I could just take myself out. I need to do it with some kind of big final act. So that, I mean, this is a guy who was, you know, writing this stuff about himself for years and no one intervened.
And it's heartbreaking for me as well that someone felt so intensely those emotions, those feelings, had those thoughts, and there was no one around him that loved him enough to help him get the help that he needed.
Yeah.
And likely reaffirmed some wacky life choices and a train of thought. Realistic.
That's on our end.
I think we lost your microphone there, Em. Can you check that real quick? Let's do a quick test. You back? Are you back?
Am I with you?
You are. You're back.
Okay.
All of a sudden, we had weirdness.
Get it together, JP.
Why did I get blamed for that?
She knows. She's worked with you. She
true.
can blame it on you and get away with it.
Yeah, but all I was saying was it's very heartbreaking to me that for years this was known that this individual felt this way, was dealing with a lot of internal personal demons, and no one around him pushed for help.
Yeah.
And also, I know what it's like here in the state of Alabama. We had 2 major mental health facilities closed in my lifetime, Bryce and the North Alabama mental health care facilities. And when those things aren't accessible, when you can't, you're taking resources away from people who really need them. And then we're going to affirm what people believe about themselves instead of we're going to affirm what is real and true and God-given.
Yeah.
Then you get into situations like this.
Well, it's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking right as you're talking too, that that would be me, you, and JP have all had a Christian school in our life. And there's listen, I would not trade a thing about my kids were raised in an environment where I not only knew what they were being taught educationally, but I knew what they were being taught spiritually. And it meant the world. There were times when that school was almost like our other church in a sense.
Right.
There was a lot of worship there. There was a lot of growth there. There was a lot of raising up a child in the way they should go. And I look at it and think, I believe that was a big part. In fact, the FBI says they're now investigating this as a hate crime against Catholicism. That I really do believe he targeted this not just because he had a personal connection to the school. He targeted it because it was a Christian school, period.
Right. And wasn't that the case with the Nashville shooter as well?
It was.
There was a connection there as well. I don't understand it. It's mind-boggling to me.
I don't get it either, but it's a sad situation. But listen, we got better things to talk about. We got to take a break right now, but we got much better things to talk about because you got a thing coming that I think folks need to hear about, and it's a good cause. So stand by. I want to get all the details from you. All right. We got Emily Hayes on the line. JP, we got Emily Hayes on the line. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Part of my weird resume is that I spent 7 years in full-time ministry with an organization called Young Life, which is headquartered in Colorado Springs, by the way. And I spent time in Springs because of that.
Yeah.
Love that city. Probably back when you were actually messing up things. But we called it relational evangelism.
Yeah.
It was earning the right to share your faith is what we called it.
Yeah.
And it was not relationship, with a catch. It was relationship with purpose. And also, oh, by the way, if you don't love Jesus, I'm still going to love you.
Yeah.
So it was true friendship, but we earned the right to share our faith, we called it. And there's a passage of scripture just came to me while we're sitting here talking, hearing you say it. I believe it's in Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians. It says, because we loved you so much, we were content not just to share the gospel, but our very lives as well.
Yeah.
Meaning the gospel's really important, but I'm even going to share who I am in a relationship with you. And that's where Charles was, it sounds like.
Yep. 100%.
Very cool. All right, so you're hanging out with Charles.
We're at Walsenburg about a year in. I don't remember exactly how it breaks down. He gets shipped to Sterling Correctional Facility. So I'm there on my own. Huerfano County Correctional Center in Walsenburg was a private prison. So it's like Corporations Correction of America, or I guess they call it some other company now, Core Civic. It was one of those prisons, and it got shut down. And so I get moved to Benton County, which is another Core Civic prison. It was Corrections Corporation of America at the time. I'm there for 6 months, and then they moved me to Canyon City, to Arrowhead Correctional Center, which is like Camp Cupcake, okay? And so they moved me to Camp Cupcake, and they didn't know they made a mistake. With my sentence and how much time I have, I'm not allowed to be at Camp Cupcake, right? I'm not supposed to be. And I'm there for like 2 months, and it's up in the mountains in Canyon City, Colorado. I'm like, man, I can get used to this. It was like God gave me a little vacation, and then once they figured it out, they ended up shipping me to Sterling Correctional Facility. I walk out on the yard at Sterling Correctional Facility, which is a massive prison, right? There's 4 separate yards, so I didn't have to land on the yard with him. But I walk out on they call it the 20s yard where I was, and boom, there's Charles.
How about that?
Right away. So
back together again.
Yeah.
Pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and he was a softball coach. That was his way of doing evangelism. He put together a softball team, and it was like, is it? I remember how shocked I was when I walked into a medium security prison. So there's like killers and everything in this prison, and there's a softball team which requires these things called metal bats. I'm like, they have metal bats in prison? Like, that seems counterintuitive.
Who thought this was okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he did. He coached a softball team, and I was the third baseman, and that was his way that he would evangelize guys. And so I get to Sterling, he's like, hey, what was great about Sterling is they had grass. So I was excited to play softball there, but that's neither here nor there. And so he's like, man, you want to play softball again? Yeah. So he's just doing the same thing, friends, ministering, planting seeds. And he goes, man, Brian, you got parole coming up in a couple of years. You really need to get you some certificates for the parole board. I'm like, great. And he's like, well, I'm the chaplain's assistant. I can get you into some programs. And the chaplain's office was over all the programs, secular or otherwise. I'm like, cool, yeah, get me in. And he gets me into them, and it's they're faith-based programs.
Ah.
And so I got in there, and I'm like, Charles. So I get in.
That gospel in on you again.
He did. And but it was really interesting. And I get in there, and the first program was like Kumbaya, come as you are. It was very, it was not very high theology. It was not rigorous. It was just like, we want to love on you. But in that program, there was like 5 or 6 other guys that were like Charles, guys who'd been down for like 20 years that were men, and they were steeped in the word. And I got around those guys, and I'm just like, geez, like I'm drawn to this, but I can't admit it. And so that program ends, and I went to Charles. I'm like, hey man, I think I need some more certificates for the parole board. And he's like, okay,
wink, wink, nod, nod.
And so he gets me into this next one. Well, it was very high theology, and it was very rigorous, and it was very much, this is what the Word of God says. It's called The Truth Project with Dr. Del Tackett, which is Christian Worldview and Apologetics.
I got it written down. I was going to ask you about it.
So good. Like, I highly recommend everything Del Tackett does. Everyone should just go and look at all of it. I mean, he did Answers in Genesis. He does The Truth Project. He's got, so many great things. Watch, but what this one is Christian Worldview and Apologetics. You come in, you watch an hour-long video, and then you have an hour-long table discussion afterwards. And I would watch the hour-long video that was, very, this is what the Word of God says, this is this, but it's like applying it to creation and politics and culture. And it was
giving you a base.
Yeah, and it was so good. Yeah, so good. But when you're not a Christian, it's not so good, right? And so I'm like, this is bullcrap. I hate this. You guys are stupid. And I did. I told those guys at the table, if you believe this crap, you guys are idiots. You're stupid. And I always tell people, it's like, just because they're Christians doesn't mean they're not convicts, okay? And so, like, you tell someone, even us, like, if someone came up and, like, put their finger in our face and said, you're stupid for believing Jesus, I don't know. I hope that I wouldn't punch him in the face, right? But
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're going back to the phones with Emily Hayes, who, by the way, in case you ever wondered about these secrets, the recipes for all the success of the Dale Jackson Show, it's because of Emily. So there's that.
That's very kind. Oh, by the way, I'm supposed to check in and see if you're going to do this pull-up challenge with Dale.
Well, I tell you what, Dale can't do it, so why would I? But I actually, like even this morning, I'm not bragging, but even this morning I was working out, and 100 push-ups is what I do. So not all together. I did like sets of 40, 30, 20, 10, but the pull-ups, I haven't done pull-ups in like a long time, sister. So
the pull-ups are a big ask. I mean, I'm staying out of this, but Dale said if you agreed, then you could go against Yaffe. So
I see how he threw Yaffe out there. Okay,
poor Yaffe.
Hey, listen, you're really good at what you do, radio stuff, but you are also really involved with some other folks, and there's a big event coming up, and I want you to have time to talk about it here for a few minutes. So talk to us about this, the whole golf tournament coming up and what it supports.
Okay, so I also do work for the Star Charity Golf Classic, and this is the 16th year of the Star Charity Golf Classic. Over these last 15 years, they've raised over $700,000 for local charities in Huntsville.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's just to get into what that day looks like, it's an incredible day up at the ledges. You get to play this course, and we say that if you play the Star Charity Golf Classic and you leave hungry, then you didn't do it right. We have a whole, our owner, Darden Heritage, loves to do what I call Ribland, and it's right outside the 10th hole. He has this whole big setup with a smoker and all that stuff, and he's doing ribs all day long and with sides and stuff, and it's set up to where you just drive through on your little golf cart on the way to 10, and you get your to-go plate with you.
Wow.
There's food set up across the whole course. There's drinks. There's the most incredible swag bag when you check in. It's a phenomenal day. It all wraps up with some activities at your steak dinner. It's a great day out there at the ledges, and it all benefits the National Children's Advocacy Center and the Military Child Education Coalition, two incredible organizations doing stuff for our kids, especially with the Military Child Education Coalition. As I'm sure you'll understand, when children are moving from deployment to deployment or things like that, they start to lose. There's just differences in education in schools, and the Military Child Education Coalition, one of the things they do is help kids get up to that level, bridge the gap. If they're further ahead in math somewhere than the child is,
I got to tell you,
work.
I wish that had been around. I remember as a kid being stationed one place and then moving back to Huntsville, and it turns out I was half a year behind in math, and I had to go every day after school and get extra lessons to get caught up. And then I went to half my high school in London, England, at a DoD school overseas, and then came back to Grissom in Huntsville and graduated. I totally get that. So let me ask you this, because I don't want to run out of time. You guys, this amazing event y'all do, and the golf tournament, people want to participate in any form or fashion. What are you advising right now? How can they still be involved?
So if you're not a golfer, we have 8 golf teams still available. So if you want one of those, just get in touch with me. There's many ways to do so. But if you want to do something easy, you're not a golfer, but you want to throw a couple of bucks towards the charities, every location of Star Market and Star Discount Pharmacy, as well as Probst Discount Drugs and Huntington Pharmacy in and around the Huntsville area, are selling golf flags. Those golf flags are $1 and $5 increments. So if you want to buy $20 worth of flags, that'll go straight towards our overall total to donate to the charities. And this is the last weekend to do it. We stop on September 1st. We sell them for the whole month of August. So there's 5 locations of Star Discount Pharmacy: Madison, Bailey Cove, Meridianville, 5 Points, Gurley. There's Star Market in 5 Points, the classic, the one that's been there for 8 decades, holding down the fort in 5 Points. And there's also Star Market in Meridianville, of course, Probst there in 5 Points, and Huntington down there off of South Parkway.
I love Star Market at 5 Points. That place is so cool.
It's so great.
It is. You walk in, it's like you're going back in time, and yet everything is current all at the same time. It's just kind of weird. Hardwood floors and and all the latest stuff. All right, sister, that is good stuff. So people can buy flags, $1 and $5 increments. They still got 8 teams. I'm going to ask you right now, if they want to reach out to you about participation or sponsorship, because y'all are sponsoring 2 amazing charities. If they want to reach out to you, how can they do it? Or we can have them text here, or we can give them your contact, whatever you want to do. What's your preference?
If they're comfortable texting you and wanting more information about that, JP knows how to get in touch with me, so he can forward that on to me. But if you want more information about it, you can check out HuntsvilleStarMarket.com.
HuntsvilleStarMarket.com. So the number here is 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. You text in, JP will put you in touch with her. Or you can go to, say it again, the website.
HuntsvilleStarMarket.com.
Too easy. That's awesome. Okay. Emily, listen, I'm just going to go ahead and say, you're the reason why Dale Jackson Show works. Just so you know.
Oh, Phil.
It's just true. JP,
you're too kind to me.
JP worked there for a while. He told me all the inside baseball. We know that Dale doesn't know where the buttons are or anything, and he rolls out of bed first thing in the morning, splashes water in his face, and then you guys already have coffee hot for him, and it's all good. and just works.
Well, it's a team effort.
Come on,
Teamwork
JP,
makes
chime
the
in,
dream
man.
work.
Well, hey, I mean, we would have coffee ready for him if he was in the studio. But
That's right.
JP.
That's right. I forgot. By the way, I've been to his home studio. It's nothing but empty beer cans and dirty socks. It was awful.
Listen, empty Monster cans.
Yes.
And his energy drinks. I tell you what.
All right. Well, listen, make sure that tomorrow morning you go on the show and say that we know all of his secrets and that I'm going to start letting them out one day at a time, just enjoying the fact that I'm going to out everything about the Dale Jackson Show, except that the first thing we're going to say is it's Emily Hayes who makes it all work now. Thank you.
Kind.
Thank you
Too
very
kind.
much. Give her some applause. How about some applause? That's good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mama. Thank you very much. All right. We love you, Emily. Thank you so much for all you do.
Love you guys. Thank you.
See ya. All right. Listen, we got plenty going on here on this show, and it's just great to have friends. She's awesome. You know what? You worked with her for a while.
Oh yeah, she's the best. Yeah,
she is. Absolutely. What did they call the two of y'all together?
Oh, the Prophecy. Yeah.
Two of y'all together. Dale called you the Prophecy.
Yeah, because we would do the show, us two, whenever Dale had to go, on a drinking trip or something. And so we were the Prophecy. It was us to overtake his show. So yeah.
His show is like at 6 a.m. and he's already on drinking trips. Is that what I'm hearing?
I guess so, yeah.
All right. Last half hour coming up on a Thankful Thursday. You guys stay tuned. We will be right back.
So here I am in prison doing just that, and Charles is just done. He's just like throwing his hands in the air. He's like, oh my gosh. And so this goes on for like 2 or 3 weeks where I'm like full tilt arguing with these guys. And we walk back to the unit, and so here's the education building. Our unit's over here, and there's a sidewalk that you got to walk around like that. And we're walking back, and we get to about right here, and Charles just looks over at me, and he says, Brian, why don't you give him a chance? Why don't you give him a chance? Jesus being to give him a chance, right? And for whatever reason, in God's sovereignty, as I look at it, that was the moment, okay? And all my guard, all my defensive mechanisms, for whatever reason, I just said, okay. And kind of as I said earlier, I knew God was real, but I didn't understand Jesus. And he's asking me to give Jesus a chance, not God, but Jesus, which was different. I said, okay. So I went back to my cell and prayed, as I often did. And I said, God, if I need to believe this Jesus character was truly your son, these were my problems with Jesus, okay? And it turns out they're pretty big issues. Said if this Jesus character was truly your son, that he was born of a virgin, that he lived a perfect, I'm scoffing as I say all this, I'm like, he lived a perfect life, that he died and his death did something for me, and that he rose from the dead. God, if I need to believe that to be okay with you, I need you to show me something because I'm having a really hard time with this. So I go to sleep that night, and I have a horrible, horrible nightmare. I mean, it was a crazy nightmare, and I still remember like a lot of it, which is crazy, but it didn't make a lot of sense what was happening in it, like flashing faces. It even felt demonic, right?
Well, it probably was.
Yeah. And I'm falling off of a cliff at the end of it, and right before I hit the ground, I wake up. Like when you're falling in a
like
dream.
real life wake up.
Yeah, like
Okay.
wake up, whoa. And the only thing I can see, it's completely dark in the cells, and we have those old red digital clocks, right? And so the only thing you can see in the room when I wake up is the red digital clock, and it says 3:16.
Huh.
And the only Bible verse I've ever known my entire life is John 3:16, and it just boom, right? And that was the answer to my question, right? For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. You asked, I answered, buddy. It's Sunday morning at 3:16 in the morning. What are you going to do? I guess I'm going to church. So I did. I waited till 8, and I went to Christian services, as they call it in prison, because they have to be politically correct. Went to Christian services, and, I don't remember. I sat as far off to the side as I could with my friend Ramon that was on the softball team. Ramon's such a cool dude. He's a giant black dude, just yoked. I'm talking like waist this big, perfect six-pack, pecs this big, arms just huge, dude. And I had this thing where, and it was a problem in prison. It's the Ned Flanders Christianity. I don't know if you know what I mean by that. If you ever watched The Simpsons, Ned Flanders. Oh, yeah. Okay, so like okie diddly okie doke. It's like this soft kind of weak, effeminate, gay thing. Like a lot of Christians, they're like nicer than God and holier than Jesus. You know what I mean? It's just a weird thing, and so. I always rubbed me the wrong way, but here's Ramon, this dude, anyway, I'm not gonna, he's not that guy. That's what I'll say, right? And he was the guy that brought the blood gang from California to Colorado cold-blooded killer until God got a hold of him, and now he's like the prison evangelist. These young guys come in, and he was in Unit 21, which is where you go when you first get to Sterling, and then from Unit 21 you get sent out to all the other buildings. But they kept him in there, and these new guys would come in, particularly young black guys, and he would like body him up and be like, "This is the gospel," you know what I mean? And like it was crazy, it was really interesting. So anyway, this is the guy that I went to go sit in church with because I don't want to be around any of the Ned Flanders guys, you know what I mean? And I wasn't going to let Charles think that he won, you know? And so I sit off to the side in the back, and I don't remember anything Chaplain Davis said. I don't remember what the sermon was on at all. But at the end, he says, "All right, guys, we're going to do an invitation." I look over at Ramon. I'm like, "Brother, what's an invitation?" I just knew he was going to be like, "Brother, that's where you invite Jesus into your heart." But that's not what he said. He said, "Brother, if you got something hindering your relationship with God, you can go down there and pray with that man about it." And he stepped aside because he already knew that God was on me. As they say in the South, I've learned some Alabama euphemisms. God was on me like a pack of dogs on a three-legged cat. Anyway, so I walk the aisle, as it were, the proverbial aisle, get down there. Chaplain Davis grabs my hand, puts his other hand on my shoulder. He says, "Mr. Dawson, how can I pray for you?" So look, chap, I'm not here to make any decisions. I just want to pray that God would soften my heart so the truth can come in, because I feel him working on me, but I'm fighting him with everything I have. And we get done praying, and he's just got tears pouring down his face. And
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show, this one. This show goes like from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains that we call Auburn, straight across the line to what we now call, once again, Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia, Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. That's just the radio. That's all y'all in radio land. And there's a whole bunch of y'all in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web every single day, live streaming the show, looking in on the studio, seeing what we're doing in here. Live streaming on places like X and Rumble and YouTube and Facebook and our website, rightsidemedia.org, rightsidemedia.org. And then all you podcasters who catch it after the fact, just to catch up on things you might have missed. But the bottom line is this, you guys. I say all that every single time I say that, not just to be funny or whatever, but I say it because I want you to know that wherever you're catching this show, we can see it and we appreciate it. And y'all mean more to us than you could possibly imagine. You're the only reason why we do this. I mean, JP and I could sit here and talk into this microphone all day. If nobody was out there, what good would it do? So thank you very much for being a part of the fabric of our lives. Hey, listen, I'm going to take a call here in a minute. Andy Blaylock is the chairman, I believe, of the Log Cabin Republicans. If you're not familiar, Log Cabin Republicans is an organization affiliated with the Republican Party, which is made up of LGBT members. And so this may seem like an unusual call, but it's really not, because I believe that where you can find identity together, you do. And what I love the fact is he called in because he wants to talk about the fact that Kareem's call earlier said that, you know, that basically transgenderism, you got to accept it. They've been around. And I made the comment, there's a lot of people in the gay community that don't like this, and especially with kids. So let me just take on the call right now. Andy Blaylock, Log Cabin Republicans. Andy, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Phil, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Hey, thanks for your time today. And listen, you and I have met at several events. And you know, I think I said a moment ago, I'm a firm believer in that where you can find, you know, synergy, you just do. And Log Cabin Republicans, you guys believe in about, you know, the majority of what I believe in too, apparently.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Phil, you know, when Kareem called in earlier, I thought, oh, great, an opposing view, you know, because that's what this country is all about, is free speech and people having an opinion. But boy, these days in media, you've got a lot of keyboard warriors that's ready to give that opinion. I like that Kareem called in. He expressed it verbally, but I like the way you handled that. And I agree with you. You know, I agree with you that not all of the gay community supports some of the transgender movements and all. And really, it's just been a political divide between Democrats and Republicans, mainly warfare from the Democrats to stoke a fire, you know, to try to make an issue out of it. And I tell people often the LGB is a sexual orientation, the TQIA plus ABC 1, 2, 3, all of that. I mean, and I joke, I add those because as soon as a transgender issue is resolved, they'll add another acronym, another letter. It's never going to go away as long as the Democrats have a say, because they want it to be an issue.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly right. In fact, I think they stoke it and maybe even encourage it. But let me ask you this, Andy. One of the things that Kareem said was, "Ain't nobody ever come out of it before. You've never seen," and I think that's just the opposite. I think there have been any number of people who even testified in front of Congress, if I'm not mistaken, talking about what the sort of the forced transition therapies and the fact that schools were promoting transgenderism and even doing it secretly without the parents' knowledge, that it destroyed their lives. And yet my recollection from hearing people in the gay community like Tammy Bruce and Jillian Michaels and Rick Grinnell is that there's a whole lot of the gay community that says that's not what we stand for.
You're exactly right. And we're good friends with Rick Grinnell. He's been huge in Log Cabin Republicans. So is Melania Trump, raising over $2.4 million for our national organization. You were exactly right. There are ex-transgender. There are people that have said, I wish I had never taken the gender affirming care. And that's why our local chapter in Huntsville, that's just a year old, only a year old. That's why we have found great friends with Moms for Liberty, Emily Jones and those folks. And we agree with the gender ideology bill. We hope that that'll find the legislative floor in session next year with Alabama. We need to make sure in education we're teaching the core subjects, that we're not teaching LGBTQ issues. Those are parents' rights to talk about if a parent wants to address those. And the fact that a brain is not fully developed until your mid-20s, and the fact that we can't smoke until we're a certain age, can't drink, can't even vote. But in Alabama, we finally just got it passed that a child had to be 16 before they could make their own decisions. They really should be 18, as long as they're under the parents' insurance.
I look back at me at 16. I'm thinking I didn't have the ability to make a decision about how fast to drive much. I mean, listen, if y'all knew how I drove, but nonetheless, all I'm saying is you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think it was Jillian Michaels who took a lot of heat on a show recently, and there was discussion about this because she said, "Leave the kids alone." I may be picking the wrong person, but I think it was Jillian. But she said, "Leave the kids alone," and I'm curious, why is it? And I know what my thoughts on it are, but I was going to ask you, why is it you think that the extreme far left, that especially that espouse transgenderism, are constantly reaching for kids? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's in any issue where they can say, oh, the Republicans are trying to take away parents' rights, and the children should be affirmed in their bodies of who they are and all. It respect the science of global warming until it's respect the science of there's two genders, a man and a woman, and then suddenly science can be changed. So as long as they can find a way, and it's really a shame. Not to transition too far, but you look, I mean, the Democrats are the Jasmine Crockett's and the AOC. That's really the best they've got right now. And you might throw in a little Gavin Newsom. He's trying his best and falling flat constantly. But they're trying so hard. And if they can get a rise out of the greatest percentage of people, and that's under parenthood, that, the Republicans are trying to tell you how you can and can't parent, that's what they'll do.
Yeah, and it's true, and we see it way, way, way too often. Listen, Andy, I appreciate your call, man. This is huge, and thank you for your perspective. Thank you for calling in and making time for it. I know you got other things going on today, and you didn't have to do this, but it meant a lot that you did. So anyway, Andy Blaylock, Log Cabin Republicans. I'll see you at another event sometime soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Phil. I look forward to it.
All right, take care, man. And that, by the way, is what the show stands for, is gathering all the perspectives. I think that it's fair to say you can call this show and you can have a respectful conversation. And by the way, I will say this, Andy Blaylock and I, like I said, we probably agree on 85 to 90% of everything. But the truth of the matter is there are people out there that will disavow someone's ability to even have an opinion because they don't agree on everything. And it's not going to work that way. I found in Montgomery once in a while that I would have to have 80% friends because the 100% friends were never around. There's no such thing. So that being said, great perspective. And I love the fact, Kareem, I hope you're still listening, because I hope what you heard there was a guy who calls in and said, I am of the gay lifestyle. And oh, by the way, we don't appreciate this whole transgender movement, especially on kids. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but that's pretty much what he said. So anyway, Andy Blaylock, thank you very much for calling in today. I got one more call I'll take before the break. I got about 2 or 3 minutes. Is this Mike? Where's Mike from? Do we know? Mike, how are you doing?
Yeah. I'm good. How are you, Phil?
I'm good. Mike, where are you from?
The thing I was I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, where are you from?
Oh, Huntsville.
Oh, great. All right. Mike from Huntsville. What you got, man?
We talked a couple times. I was the guy who spent some time in Russia working with the legal system.
Yes.
But
okay.
Anyway, what I was going to mention to you was the situation that we used the term shooter. And that was a term that the Democrats developed to minimize that these guys are murderers. And a shooter's a guy at the range, right?
That's a great point. You know what? That's a great point.
I'm sorry?
I said that's a great point. Yes.
And we keep using their terminology. We fall into that trap that he's not a shooter, he's a murderer or a killer. And that whole, it just minimizes what he's doing. And every time I hear the term shooter, it gives me the highs, because that's when the guys at the range were in competition. That's what we're referred to.
Yeah. You know, that's a great point. I've caught most of their, I hadn't even caught that one. I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right. In fact, I said earlier, maybe it was yesterday, actually. Yeah, it was yesterday on my monologue, that liberals, what they do is they grab words and they either co-opt the word for their own purposes, or they change and make a new word. And what you just said was exactly that. Shooter is not what they are. They're a murderer. Yep, absolutely. Hey, great.
It falls into the intent to eliminate the Second Amendment, and anybody who's shooting a firearm is a shooter. And so they have hijacked that term and they've used it in the form, and we've all adopted it, which is just insane.
Great call, Mike. Appreciate you, Mike from Huntsville. Thanks for calling in, man. Take care. I got to take a break, so we'll take a break right now. Last break of the day on a thankful Thursday. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Davis is not a tears down the face guy. He's not a hugger. He's not a crier. He's just, he's a man, and again, I'm a man and I hug and I cry, but he's not that kind of man. And to see him weeping in front of 130 inmates, I was like, what just happened? And I count that the moment that God saved me. And so I leave there, and Charles gives me a Bible, Thomas Nelson, New King James Bible. Here you go. And I said, start reading the story of Joseph. And so I get back to my cell and I start reading the story of Joseph, and I'm hooked. I can't get enough, feasting on God's word. And that goes on for about 9 months. It went on long past that, but about 9 months into me feasting on God's word, really just being shaped and molded by his word, loving it, feasting on it, it changing me.
Mm-hmm.
About 9 months into that, I look around and all my friends in there have pen pals. They've got some girl they're writing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, let's see. So I call my mom. My mom was running a Facebook page for me, and so what that looks like is she logs in, but the account she logs into has my picture on it, where I'm not in prison. That's my bait. Look, I'm not in prison, but I really am. And so she's running this Facebook page.
So your mom's catfishing for you.
She's catfishing for me, yeah. And we were very unsuccessful at first, and so I say, basically, look, don't reach out to these girls. They're from my bad past.
It's cool that your mom was doing that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we reached out to all these girls that were healthy and went to college and weren't drug addicts. Well, I don't know if you know this about healthy girls who aren't drug addicts. They're not real big on writing guys in prison. So those, you have to pick one or the other. You can either have the unhealthy girl that'll write.
I've never studied that, but I can imagine it.
Yeah, no,
okay.
it's there. And so I struck out completely, and I said, okay, God, I can't take any more rejection. If you want me to have a pen pal, you're going to have to do it, because I'm done.
We're talking old school, write it down on a piece of paper, pen pal.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, everybody in there, yeah.
Put it in an envelope, snail mail it out. Yep.
Correct, yep. And
the prison probably has to read your letter to make sure it doesn't say anything, right?
I think they read a lot more of the ingoing than they do the outbound, but it depends. Okay. If you're writing from prison to prison, they read both. They have some system. I don't know how they do it, but there's definitely people who wrote some stuff they shouldn't have that got in trouble, and I can't remember which direction the mail was going. But you don't seal it.
Yeah.
You put it in there and it's open. I remember that now that you say that, because I always say, oh yeah, I sealed it, but I actually know you don't. You put your thing in there and you put your stamp on it and you drop it in the mailbox, and then they go through and open it and look at it and then send it out. So forgot about that now that you bring that up. So no one wants to write me. Said, okay, God, you're going to have to do it. Told my mom I'm done, whatever. And so I don't know, 2-3 weeks, maybe it was a month. I don't know. It goes by. I say, call my mom just to check in, see how she's doing. And she goes, hey, Brian, do you know this girl named Christina Ewan? I said, yes, ma'am.
You've known her for a long time.
A long time. So Christina Ewan, back in Derby, Kansas, where my dad was. Said we grew up together. I was head over heels in love with her, all throughout middle school and high school. We went to 8th grade graduation dance together. After that was the first of many times I professed my undying love to her. And I always say that she gave me the Heisman. It was like, I just want to be friends. Just
friend zone.
Friends. And so I got friend zoned hardcore. And that went on literally from 8th grade to the beginning of 12th grade before I left Derby. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, if you laid out all my yearbooks from kindergarten to 12th grade and said you can pick one girl to marry, it's Christina every single time. She's like, oh, okay, well, so why? And she said, well, she wants to write you. Excuse me? I said, well, yeah, Christina wants to write you. I was like, does she know I'm in prison? Yeah, she knows you're in prison. Okay, well, that's...
Despite the picture on the Facebook page,
yeah,
I actually am in prison wearing greens right now.
Correct. And so that's it. So my mom's, catching the thing where Christina's thinking she's messaging me. So that's how that happened. So Christina is on Facebook, and Brian Dawson shows up as a suggested friend. And she's like, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to Brian in 10 years. Clicks, sends a message. And then my mom's like, actually, this isn't Brian. This is Brian's mom. He's in prison. To which most women say, oh, dear God, and would run.
Yeah,
but
unfriend.
Not Christina. And she said, well, I'd love to write him. And so again, I say, God, you're going to have to do it. And God did it, right? I didn't send her a friend request. We didn't reach out to her. She found me and reached out to me.
Yeah.
And my mom said, hey, this is what's going on. She said, I want to write him. So God did that. And so I got her address from my mom and wrote her the first letter, though. And said, look, I didn't get drunk and run somebody's dog over. Like, this isn't like some fluke thing. Like you hear about this weird guy that got thrown, like never did anything wrong.
Oh, really in prison for reasons.
Yeah, I belong here. I earned it.
Like real prison reasons.
Correct. And so I said, but God has saved me and I am changed. And everybody in here says that, by the way, but like I'm an open book and I'm willing to prove it to you. And she writes me back. And again, in my mind, she was, the girl that she was in middle school and high school. I mean,
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. All right, Thankful Thursday. Let me get a few text messages, and then I'll go to the phones. I got Fritzy from Huntsville says, Colonel, much better use of Emily's talent than Dale. And then John from Huntsville also chimed in, says, Emily Hayes is definitely the most professional person at WVNN. Hey, we're at WVNN. Hang on a second.
Yeah. By proxy, we were insulted there.
That's right. Cody from Huntsville checks in, says, Mr. Blaylock, who called in a minute ago, Andy Blaylock. He says, Mr. Blaylock was my 7th and 8th grade teacher. I stood behind him when he ran. Glad he decided to call in. Good stuff, man. Shag Nasty the Atheist got several texts. I'm not sure I can get to all of them. Saying, why do religions go after kids so much? Train up a child and all that. Any ideology must pursue education and indoctrination. You know what, though? What happens here very often with the libs is y'all separate the parents from it. You decide you want to tell the kid what they need to hear, whereas the reality is all the others were saying parents are involved, parents have made the choice. And then he says the war against woke is a war against information, pure and simple. Okay, that's why we just had the log cabin Republicans on the show, right? Okay. Shag, come back around, man. There's still light at the end of the tunnel. Robert from Hazel Green says, instead of being black and trans activist, I wish Kareem could just be an American activist. Okay, there he is. Scott from Somerville says, I've said repeatedly, liberals have bastardized our language to advance their agendas, i.e. transgender instead of transsexual. Nouns have gender. People have sex. There it is. And then Jeff from Athens says, Solomon wrote, there's nothing new under the sun. Read what Jonathan Cahn has written about Baal and Asherah and how they pursued children. And then the priests cross-dressed back in the day. That's a crazy thought, but I think you're right. And then last one before I go to the phones, John from Huntsville has the grades in. He says Lee and Scott Buttram both get an A+ for their equally awesome performances. Phil, JP, and Andy Blaylock all get an A+ for their equally brilliant performances. But today's winner is obviously without a doubt the wonderful, amazing Emily Hayes with a perfect A++, and she is definitely the best current VNN employee. See how he did that? VNN employee.
There you go.
There you go.
That's better.
Let me go to the phones because you know who's on the line. That would be Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Well, the well wasn't dry today on the phone system, was it?
No, dude, we were wide open. In fact, it wound up being a one dipper day because the audience was so engaged today.
Yeah, I love it.
I do too.
That's the way it should be, I think.
That's actually a dynamic show right there. Well, where are you right now, by the way? Where are you on the road?
Goodlettsville at about 5 miles an hour. Today seems to be the day that everybody's going somewhere. I guess, I don't know.
All God's children on the road with you today, huh?
Oh yeah, they're everybody's here today. That's for sure.
Well, tell me what you think about today, which the majority of today we talked about the fact that prayer is so important in the wake of the Minnesota shooting, and we also talked about the Trans-Mania, and then we even had Andy Blaylock call in from the Log Cabin Republicans. Give me your thoughts.
I loved all that, but you know, the thing about it is on this trans shooter and stuff, you know, the lamestream media, you know, they must have just really been taken aback when they couldn't peg it as a young white, you know, if he'd have had a MAGA hat on or something, you know, when they found out he checked all the boxes for the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, he hit every box. He hit every single one of them, and not only that, he was mentally disturbed, and their red flag laws didn't catch it. So basically, they failed in more ways than one.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting for them to peg this on a Democrat thing, you know, and stuff. Is like they had their little conference in Minnesota. You know, I'm thinking maybe this is what set this guy off, you know, to do it at this time, you know, when they're.
That's right.
You know,
the DNC was actually meeting or something, weren't they? I'd forgotten about that. And they actually adjourned their meeting because they thought it wasn't appropriate to be in session or something while this was all going down.
Yeah, I mean, they was having these meetings and stuff, and you know, the convict in the White House, and you know how this ICE is worse than the COVID things, and you know, I now that all this is done and everything, you know, if this was a MAGA supporter and everything, well, they'd be all blaming every Republican known to man plus Donald Trump, you know. But I think we need to fight fire with fire and everything, and this lies fully at the feet of the Democrats. This is their policies for the extreme liberals. This is what it is.
It's their policies. It's their rhetoric. It's their determination to allow cultural, or not allow, but try and force cultural change. It's the idea that they can live the lie that transgenderism is to be affirmed. And I look at the whole thing, and then, oh, by the way, the lie that if they pass more draconian gun laws, it'll stop this kind of stuff from happening. It doesn't.
The only gun laws that's going to help this is demand gun-free zones. Yeah, that's the only gun law that's going to help this matter.
Yeah.
Because, like I say, if shooting ranges don't have mass killings for some reason, and that's where the most guns are at.
Isn't that amazing?
Amazing.
And you look at Australia. Australia first they confiscated the guns, and now they're confiscating the knives. Right? And then you got the young lady in the United Kingdom who was arrested because she pulled a knife when some illegal immigrants or migrants were sort of verbally accosting her. She pulled a knife out. She was at 12 years old. She was the one arrested.
Yeah, I just wonder if somebody starts running over people over there, they're going to start confiscating cars. I guess maybe they're about to be walking for long. Apparently.
Next thing you know, down in Australia, the only thing left with a weapon is the kangaroos. They got nothing left.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have a little common sense to even live in that country, because, like I say, everything out there is wanting to kill you.
That's exactly right.
Just to survive. But I think the most dangerous animal in Australia right now is a lame frame leadership right now.
That's exactly right. Well, listen, I think that there's still more to come on this Minneapolis shooter. I think we're going to find out things, and JP was even talking earlier about this whole. I didn't realize he was part of this whole kind of confab on the internet that sit there and stoke each other up with all the claims that they've been aggrieved. And mental health's a big deal, man, and you got to pay attention to people.
Yeah, when we shut down the institution, all people don't need to be institutionalized, but we have a significant number that needs to be. And I just don't know where they go anymore. I haven't seen any institutions, so
Yeah.
they're out here among us now.
Yeah. Well, and that's right. With no options. But I tell you what, they do have an option, but it requires other people to engage. So people like this kid's mom should have been far more engaged in his mental health. And I know that I'm supposing some things. I'm presuming. At the same time, I also know that she helped him sign up for a name change when he was 17 as a minor. So I think some of this has to get laid at her feet. But all that to say, listen, man, we're up against the hard time, but you be safe on the road. We'll talk at you tomorrow. All right.
I'm safe at 5 mile an hour.
All right. All right. See you, buddy. Well, listen, I'm going to end the show by saying what I said earlier. Prayer works, prayer matters, pray. All right. So the left is screaming right now that prayer is not what we need. And I would say just the opposite. Prayer is exactly what we need. So you guys pray for the people in Minnesota. You can't be there physically to take them a meal or to comfort them or to hug their neck or anything else. That's not always normal. You can't always get there. It's not always possible. But the reality is you can pray. You can pray anywhere. You can pray without ceasing. You can pray and bring peace that surpasses all understanding. And I also always say, there's more of us than there are of them. God's still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.